The 100th time I threw away S-rank, the guild's testing crystal called me a failure. Flashed F so hard the letter burned through the wooden table. The examiner stared at the smoke. The hunters waiting behind me stared at my cheap black hoodie, my scuffed boots, and the bent spoon hanging from my belt like it was a legendary weapon. Then they laughed. I laughed too, because the crystal was technically correct. My name is Cole. I was level 1. I had the base rank of a sleepy house cat. I could barely produce enough visible mana to warm a cup of soup. I also had 100 S-rank skills sleeping inside my soul, 100 class traits fused into my body, and a private armory of soul-bound equipment that included a sword sharp enough to cut thunder, an umbrella that could block a volcano, and the bent spoon. The spoon was more dangerous than the sword. Nobody in that guild knew any of this. As far as they were concerned, I was the same stubborn failure who had tested as F-rank several times over the years, vanished into dungeons, returned covered in monster ash, and somehow stayed F-rank. A few people thought I had a death wish. A few thought I was pretending to be weak for attention. Most people simply moved aside so my bad luck would not touch them. The examiner tapped the crystal again. The F appeared a second time. Still F, he said. I was worried it might be G, I replied. There was no G rank. That earned another laugh. Up on the second floor balcony, Marcus leaned against the glass with the relaxed posture of someone who had never been doubted in his life. He was the city's brightest S-rank celebrity, famous for turning dungeon bosses into glowing dust with his solar thread skill. He did not wear heavy armor or carry a giant shield. Marcus fought in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, as if destroying a skyscraper-sized monster was something he did between lunch and a haircut. Beside the testing floor, Gavin was finishing an A-rank speed trial. He moved through 12 steel targets so quickly that the cuts appeared before he did. The crowd cheered when the targets slid apart. Gavin glanced at my F-rank result and gave me the kind of smile people saved for broken vending machines. Near the back wall, Harper did not laugh. She stood at a workbench with a wrench in one hand and a metal cube in the other. She was an artifact engineer, which meant she could turn monster bones into engines and broken dungeon traps into things that exploded in more useful directions. Her scanner was aimed at me. The scanner made a sad noise, spat out a spring, and died. Harper looked at the smoke curling from it, then looked at me. That was the first time anyone in the room stopped smiling. Before she could say anything, the floor shook. The lights snapped off. A deep metallic howl rolled up from beneath the city, followed by the sound of a train braking on tracks that did not exist. Every hunter in the guild went quiet. A red gate tore open under the building. Not beside it, not across the street, directly under it. The marble floor split in a perfect circle. Black stairs spiraled downward into a subway station that had never been built. Green flames burned along the walls. An arrival board flickered over the opening. Final stop, everyone. Then a train made of teeth rushed past somewhere in the darkness below. The emergency sirens started screaming. Marcus smiled like the world had finally given him a proper stage. Gavin drew his thin, curved blades. Harper snapped the dead scanner shut and stuffed it into her coat. I picked up the testing crystal. The examiner asked what I was doing. Returning this, I said. Then I dropped it into the gate. 3 seconds later, something enormous bit down in the darkness. The crystal shattered between its teeth, and a level notification appeared in front of my eyes. I had dealt 1 point of damage. That was enough. My first retained trait, Patient Ember, awakened. Every enemy I damaged became easier for me to hurt again. The effect started tiny. It did not stay tiny. I stepped onto the stairs. Gavin blocked my path with one blade. He told me the gate was at least A rank, and that an F rank would die before reaching the first platform. He was trying to save my life, but the pity in his voice made the warning sting more than the blade. Marcus looked down from the balcony and told Gavin to let me go. He said some lessons only needed to be learned once. That almost made me laugh harder than the rank test. I had learned the lesson 100 times. Reaching S rank was not the end. It was where I started over. Years earlier, before my soul became a crowded warehouse of impossible powers, I had awakened with one skill called Warm Touch. It warmed things I touched, not burned, not melted, warmed. I could heat soup, I could dry wet socks, I could make a cold sword slightly more comfortable to hold. My first dungeon team used me as a hand warmer. While other hunters threw fireballs, summoned steel beasts, and ran across walls, I entered battle with a short knife and the ability to make it pleasantly warm. I was slow, weak, and so poor that the knife was technically a kitchen tool. I still climbed. When a cave spider covered the exit in frozen webbing, I warmed one thread until the ice loosened, pulled the entire web down, and dropped the spider into its own trap. When a stone boar charged me, I warmed the mud under its feet, turned the floor into a slick mess, and let the boar launch itself off a cliff. When a swamp beast swallowed my knife, I warmed the handle until it sneezed the weapon back out. I did not have power, so I used timing. I did not have speed, so I made enemies move where I wanted. I did not have mana, so I stopped wasting it on anything that did not look ridiculous enough to work. The first time I reached C rank, people said I had been lucky. The first time I reached B rank, they said my team had carried me. When I reached A rank alone, dragging the horn of a thunder beast behind me, people stopped laughing for almost a week. Then I met the Bell Tower Hydra. It lived inside a dungeon shaped like an upside-down city. Streets hung from the ceiling. Buildings pointed toward a red storm below. Every hour, a bell rang, gravity reversed, and anything not tied down fell 10,000 feet into the clouds. Hydra had 7 heads, each wrapped around a different bell tower. One breathed lightning, one breathed acid, one screamed hard enough to break bones. The last head did not attack at all, it watched. That was the dangerous one. The watching head learned patterns. Every time I dodged, it memorized the angle. Every time I blocked, it adjusted. By the 5th minute, the Hydra knew how I fought better than I did. So I stopped fighting like myself. I heated the city's copper gutters. I melted the frozen rain trapped inside them. I redirected rivers through hanging streets until the entire upside-down city became a maze of flowing water. Then the bell rang. Gravity reversed. 1,000,000 gallons of water fell upward. Hydra tried to dodge based on my earlier movements, but I was not attacking from any direction it understood. The flood lifted all 7 heads, twisted them around the bell towers, and tied the monster into a knot. I ran across its spine, warmed my knife until the metal glowed, and cut the ropes holding the largest bell. The bell fell upward. It hit the Hydra so hard the sound blasted the red storm apart. That was how I reached S rank for the first time, with a kitchen knife, a soup-warming skill, and a bell the size of an apartment building. World believed S rank was a summit. Every hunter dreamed of touching it once. Guild halls displayed portraits of those who made it. Children collected cards with their skills printed on the back. Entire cities slept better knowing one S rank lived nearby. I stood in the Hydra's collapsing dungeon, covered in blood and bell dust, expecting some grand reward. Instead, a small blue window appeared in front of me. Reawakening available. Reset to level 1 and F rank. Permanently retain 1 skill. Permanently retain 10% of current base stats. Permanently retain 1 class trait. Permanently retain 1 soul-bound equipment item. Everything else would be lost. There was no threat, no countdown, no hidden voice, just a choice. I stared at it for a long time. Most people would have closed the window and gone home as an S-rank hero. I looked at the Hydra's corpse, then at the red storm beyond the broken city. The battle had taken everything I had. 1 stronger monster would have ended me. 1 faster dungeon would have buried me. I had reached the top of the known ladder and discovered the sky was still full of things that could eat me. So I pressed reawaken. I kept Vector Claim, the S-rank skill I had gained from defeating the Hydra. It let me touch a force and change its direction. I kept Patient Ember, the trait that increased my damage against anything I had already hurt. I kept the Black Thread Ring, a soul-bound item that stored 1 movement and replayed it later. I kept 10% of my S-rank body. Then the dungeon vanished, my level crashed to 1, and I hit the ground so hard I bit my tongue. The first return to S-rank took me 3 years. Vector Claim was an S-rank skill, but my F-rank mana could power it for less than a heartbeat. I could redirect 1 punch, then spend an hour lying on the floor. I could bend 1 arrow, then lose feeling in both arms. If I tried to move something as large as a cart, blood came out of my nose. That did not make the skill useless. It made every use a puzzle. A giant ape swung a tree at me. I could not stop the tree, so I redirected the vibration from its first step into the rotten cliff behind it. The cliff collapsed before the swing landed. Fire Serpent filled a tunnel with flames. I could not turn the entire blast, so I touched 1 coin, redirected its momentum through the fire, and made a narrow path by splitting the flames around the spinning metal. Flying Predator dropped me from the clouds. I could not redirect my whole fall, so I moved the force 1 bone at a time. Ankles into knees, knees into hips, hips into shoulders, shoulders into the Black Thread Ring. When I hit the ground, the ring replayed the stored movement into the Predator. It crashed harder than I did. 3 years later, I reached S-rank again by defeating a dungeon boss made of living avalanches. This time I kept Endless Furnace, a skill that restored mana faster every time I emptied it completely. I kept Bone Memory, a trait that made my body remember every movement I had mastered. I kept a pair of soul-bound boots that could stand on anything for 1 second, including smoke, sound, and bad decisions. Then I reset again. My second climb took 8 months. Vector Claim gave me control. Endless Furnace gave me fuel. Bone Memory meant every sword swing from my first life returned the moment I picked up a blade. 10% of 2 S-rank bodies stacked inside me. At F rank, I was still weak by the world's standards. By normal human standards, I could kick a delivery truck through a wall. I reached S rank the third time inside a dungeon, where the sun rose every 30 seconds. I kept zero step, a movement skill that erased the distance of one step. At full power, zero step could cross a city. At level 1, it moved me the width of a fingernail. That sounded useless until I used it to move my blade through a monster's armor without crossing the space between. The armor stayed untouched. Everything behind it had a much worse day. The fourth climb took 4 months. I kept Thunder Feast, which let me eat lightning and convert it into speed. The fifth took 7 weeks. I kept Frozen Moment, which stopped the motion of one object I could name. The sixth took 19 days. I kept 100 Hands, which created invisible arms wherever my mana touched. The seventh took 12 days. I kept Pocket Sun. The name was honest. It made a sun small enough to hold. The first time I used it at F rank, it was the size of a pea and had just enough heat to toast one side of a piece of bread. I was thrilled. Warm Touch had finally received a promotion. The eighth climb took 9 days. I kept Hollow Stomach, a skill that let me store any non-living thing I could swallow. That was how the bent spoon became dangerous. I swallowed it by accident while fighting a slime in a restaurant dungeon. Hollow Stomach stored it as equipment. The slime's core fused with the metal, and the spoon gained the ability to scoop energy out of attacks. I once caught a dragon's breath with that spoon, stirred it twice, and served the fire back as soup. The dragon looked offended right before it exploded. The ninth climb took 6 days. I kept Gravity Orchard, which planted invisible seeds of gravity in anything I struck. The 10th took 3 days. By then, I had stopped thinking of F rank as weakness. F rank was a clean table. Every reset gave me another tool. Every climb taught me a faster route. I learned which monsters gave the best experience, which dungeon hazards could be turned into weapons, and which useless-looking class traits became terrifying when stacked with the right skill. I learned to level by making bosses defeat their own armies. I learned to clear lava dungeons by redirecting heat into stone until the entire mountain sneezed. I learned to trap flying monsters inside their own shadows, race thunder across a cloud, and use a healing fountain as ammunition. By the 20th reset, I could return to S rank in 1 day. By the 40th, I could do it before lunch. By the 60th, I cleared an entire dungeon while eating lunch. The sandwich was soul-bound afterward. I did not ask why. By the 80th reset, I could enter an F rank gate, raise the dungeon's difficulty by insulting the boss, and come out S rank before the people outside finished arguing over who had to carry my body home. By the 99th, the climb took 47 minutes. The 100th time I reached S rank, I was standing on the back of a space whale made of black crystal, falling through a dungeon with no ground. I defeated it by planting Gravity Orchard seeds in its teeth, making every tooth pull on every other tooth, and turning its mouth into a collapsing star. The reawakening window appeared. I kept my 100th skill, Final Echo, which repeated the last skill I used without paying its cost. I kept 10% of another S-rank body. I kept a class trait called Laughing Danger, which made my reactions faster whenever the situation became more absurd. And for my 100th soulbound item, I kept the whale's crystal rib. Then I pressed Reawaken. That was yesterday. Now I was walking down the black stairs under the guild, F-rank again, while Marcus, Gavin, Harper, and 24 hunters followed me into a subway station that wanted to eat the city. First platform came into view. Hundreds of pale creatures waited along the tracks. They had long arms, ticket punches for mouths, and conductor hats grown from bone. Behind them, the tunnel bulged as something enormous approached. Gavin whispered that an F-rank should stay behind him. Marcus told everyone to prepare for impact. Harper raised a cannon she had built from the testing table during the walk down. I took the bent spoon from my belt. The train of teeth burst from the tunnel at full speed. I smiled. My 101st climb had officially begun. The train should have crushed the entire platform. Instead, I held out the spoon. The moment its first metal tooth touched the bowl, the slime core inside the spoon activated. The spoon scooped the train's momentum as if speed were gravy. Every window shattered at once. The engine screamed. A wave of stolen force spiraled around my wrist, hot enough to turn the air white. My F-rank mana dropped to almost nothing. Endless Furnace woke up. Mana rushed back twice as fast. I used Vector Claim to turn the stolen momentum downward. The train stopped. The platform did not. All that force punched through the station floor. The stone sank 10 feet, the tracks folded like ribbon, and every ticket-mouthed creature bounced into the air with the exact same surprised expression. That was when 100 hands opened. Invisible palms appeared under all of them. I clapped. The invisible hands clapped too. Hundreds of monsters met in the center of the station, with a sound like wet laundry being fired from a cannon. Experience poured into me. Level notifications stacked so fast they covered my vision. Level 2, Level 3, Level 4. The F-rank mark beside my name flickered. Gavin had one blade raised and no idea what to do with it. Marcus's smile vanished. Harper slowly lowered her cannon and asked whether the spoon was for sale. I told her it had emotional value. That was a lie. I hated the spoon. It kept trying to eat my soup. The stopped train shuddered. Its doors opened. Inside was not a row of seats. It was a forest at night. Trees grew upside down from the ceiling of the first car. Silver insects filled the air. Farther back, each connected car held a different dungeon biome. One was a desert under a purple moon. One was an ocean sealed behind glass. One appeared to contain a thunderstorm wearing chains. The arrival board above us changed. Passengers must remain inside until digested. Then the doors began pulling us in. Suction caught every loose weapon on the platform. Swords, spears, broken stone, and one very angry ticket creature flew through the open doors. Marcus drove glowing threads into the walls and anchored half the hunters. Gavin stabbed both blades through the floor. Harper fired her cannon backward and used the recoil to stay upright. I let the train swallow me. Sometimes the fastest way through a monster was from the inside. I flew through the doors, turned in the air, and landed on the roof of the upside-down forest. My soul-bound boots treated the leaves as solid ground for 1 second. That was enough to run sideways along a branch and avoid a swarm of silver insects. The insects were not insects. Each one was a tiny mouth with wings. They chased me through the car. I used a retained skill called Borrowed Horizon. It let me change which direction my body considered forward. I pointed at the ceiling. Forward became up. I fell toward the roof, kicked off a branch, and shot past the swarm. Then I pointed through the open door behind me. Forward became backward. Every insect had bitten the air around me and counted as touching my mana. Borrowed Horizon spread through the swarm. Thousands of tiny mouths suddenly believed backward was forward. They turned around and attacked the train's wooden ribs. The first car began eating itself. Gavin came through the door behind me in a blur of silver wind. He sliced a path through the insects and landed on the same branch. He looked at my empty hands, then at the collapsing forest, and asked what kind of F-rank skill did that. Warm touch, I said. He did not appreciate the answer. Marcus entered next, carried by a web of sunlight. His solar threads spread through the car and cut every remaining insect into glowing dust. It was a beautiful attack, clean, fast, and powerful enough to make the train's walls tremble. Marcus landed without wrinkling his shirt. Then the second car opened and dumped an entire desert on him. A wall of sand hit us like a yellow ocean. Marcus disappeared. Gavin vanished to his waist. I swallowed one mouthful by accident, and hollow stomach stored 12 tons of desert inside me. The skill did not care that I had only intended to swallow air. My stomach made a sound like a cement mixer. I spat. 12 tons of sand came out as one focused beam. The blast punched through the length of the desert car, tore open the next 3 doors, and hit something large at the front of the train. A deep roar answered. More experience arrived. My rank climbed. Harper entered by riding her cannon like a sled. She skimmed across the remaining sand, swung a wrench into the wall, and deployed 6 mechanical legs from the cannon's sides. The machine caught Marcus by the collar and pulled him free. He thanked her as if he had planned the entire thing. Harper ignored him. She looked at me and said her scanner had recorded 4 separate skill patterns in under 10 seconds. I told her the scanner was probably confused. It exploded before the gate opened. Very confused. The train lurched forward. Outside the windows, the station vanished. We were moving through a tunnel filled with green fire, but the speed kept rising. The cars stretched. The forest behind us became miles long. The front of the train pulled farther away every time we approached it. That was the dungeon's real trap. The train had eaten distance. Gavin sprinted ahead. His windstep skill let him cross a car in a blink, but each doorway moved farther away. Marcus sent solar threads through 10 cars, only for the light to bend and return from behind us. The more power they used, the longer the train became. I had seen a dungeon like this during my 33rd climb. That one had been a hallway built from the inside of a worm. I had spent 6 hours running before realizing the walls fed on intention. Wanting to reach the end made the end move away. So I stopped wanting to reach it. I sat down. Gavin stared at me. Marcus ordered me to move. I took the soul-bound sandwich from my armory and started eating. It was still fresh after 80 resets. That worried me, but not enough to stop. Harper watched the walls. She understood first. The stretched trees began shrinking. The distant door moved closer. She sat beside me and took half the sandwich without asking. Gavin cursed, then sat. Marcus remained standing for 3 stubborn seconds before the doorway moved another mile away. He sat so sharply that the floor cracked. The train shortened. We ate in silence while an impossible dungeon tried to understand why its victims were having lunch. When the front car slid into reach, I used 0 step. The skill erased the final inch between my finger and the door release. The door opened before the train could stretch again. We rushed through. The front car contained the chained thunderstorm. Clouds packed the space from wall to wall. Lightning crawled over iron chains thicker than tree trunks. In the center floated a conductor with no face, only a round clock embedded in its head. It raised one hand. Every chain broke. The thunderstorm exploded. Marcus wrapped himself in solar threads. Gavin spun his blades into a wind barrier. Harper unfolded her cannon into a metal shell. I opened my mouth. Thunder Feast pulled the lightning toward me. I drank the storm. There was no graceful way to do it. Lightning entered through my teeth. My hair stood straight up. My skeleton flashed through my skin. For 1 second, I could taste every coin ever dropped on a subway track. Then the lightning became speed. I crossed the car before the faceless conductor lowered its hand. My first punch planted a gravity orchard seed in its chest. My second planted one in the ceiling. My third planted one in the train's engine. I used Final Echo. Gravity orchard activated twice. The conductor fell upward and forward at the same time. Its clock face hit the ceiling. The ceiling crashed into the engine. The engine pulled the entire front of the train into the conductor. Metal folded around it. Gavin saw the opening and moved with me. His blades became 2 silver arcs. He cut every remaining chain, not to free the storm, but to wrap the loose ends around the crushed conductor. Harper fired magnetic spikes into the same knot. Marcus burned the spikes white-hot with solar threads. For one breath, all 4 attacks locked together. Then I pointed the spoon. The storm energy I had eaten poured out. The front car became a cannon. Faceless conductor, the engine, and 600 feet of track blasted through the tunnel ahead. We followed inside a bubble of bent gravity, moving so fast the dungeon's walls became green lines. My rank climbed through E and stopped at D. The tunnel opened over an underground city. Skyscrapers hung from a cavern ceiling. Roads twisted through the air. Hundreds of tooth trains circled the buildings like sharks. At the center, wrapped around a tower of black rails, waited the true boss. It was an engine with a spine. 100 cars formed its body. Wheels spun along its sides. Its face was a furnace door packed with rotating teeth. Every time it breathed, the cavern filled with the smell of hot metal and old blood. The Iron Maw Express had been sleeping directly beneath the city. Now it was looking up. The boss bit through the rail tower and charged. Marcus moved first. Solar threads filled the cavern in a glowing web. The threads wrapped around buildings, tracks, and the boss's first 20 cars. He pulled his hands apart. The city flashed gold. 20 train cars split into perfect pieces. The crowd of hunters behind us cheered, but the boss kept coming. The cut pieces grew wheels, mouths, and legs. They became smaller trains and attacked from every direction. Marcus's strength had multiplied the enemy. Gavin leaped between the mini trains, carving through wheels and joints. He was fast enough to make the air scream, but every piece he cut became 2 more. Harper scanned the creatures with a new device she had built from the dead conductor's clock. She shouted that the boss's core was not in any single car. It traveled along the rails, shifting every fraction of a second. That was useful. I ran toward the boss. Marcus called me an idiot. He was not wrong. It was simply the correct kind of idiocy. The furnace mouth opened. A river of molten tickets poured out, each one sharp enough to cut stone. I summoned the soul-bound umbrella. It looked ordinary, black cloth, wooden handle, one bent rib from the time I used it to block a mountain. I opened it. The molten river hit the umbrella and split around me. Heat rolled across the cavern. The umbrella's fabric smoked but held. I planted its tip on the rail and used it as a sail. The boss's own fire pushed me forward. I shot up the rail, surfing on one boot with the umbrella spread behind me. Mini trains lunged from both sides. 100 hands grabbed them by the jaws and forced their mouths open. I ran across their teeth like stepping stones. Gavin caught up on my left. He cut a path through the pieces without striking them twice, preventing further division. Harper rode a spinning wheel on my right. She had turned the conductor's clock into a rail-tracking compass and was shouting the core's position every time it jumped. Marcus came above us, walking on solar threads. He was still trying to look calm, but his shirt was on fire. The core moved from the boss's tail to its 40-second car. Then the 9th, then the 91st. Too fast to hit. I used Frozen Moment. The skill required me to name one object. I could not freeze the core because I had never seen it. So I named the rail. Every track in the cavern stopped moving. The boss's core tried to jump along the rail network and hit a motionless instant. For less than a heartbeat, it became visible as a black seed of light inside the boss's throat. Harper fired her cannon. Gavin crossed both blades and launched a crescent of compressed wind. Marcus dropped every solar thread into one spear of white fire. I threw the spoon. The spoon arrived last. That mattered. Harper's shot broke the furnace door. Gavin's wind cleared the molten tickets. Marcus's spear pierced the boss and exposed the core. The spoon scooped the core out. The Iron Maw Express froze in the middle of its charge. I reached the end of the rail, jumped through the broken furnace mouth, and caught the spoon inside the engine. The black core beat against the metal bowl like a heart. Experience erupted through my D rank became C. C became B. My body grew stronger so quickly that the shockwave tore the engine apart around me. I landed on the boss's spine, while 100 train cars began falling from the cavern sky. The dungeon started collapsing. The underground city cracked open. Stone the size of buildings rained toward the hunters below. The black stairs leading back to the guild disappeared behind a wall of debris. Marcus tried to hold the ceiling with solar threads. Gavin cut falling stones, but each cut doubled the number of pieces. Harper's cannon overheated and melted into a glowing lump. I looked at the dead boss. Then I looked at the 100 train cars attached to it. We did not need an exit. We had transportation. 100 hands ripped the boss's spine free and bent it into a loop. Gravity Orchard planted seeds along the wheels. Vector Claim turned every falling stone sideways and slammed them into the train cars, welding the broken metal together through pure impact. Harper understood what I was building. She jumped onto the engine, tore open its control box, and replaced the missing core with her clock compass. Gavin ran the length of the train, cutting away twisted sections. Marcus used solar threads to stitch the cars together. 30 seconds later, the dead dungeon boss had become the ugliest train ever built. I put Pocket Sun inside the furnace. The pea-sized star expanded. The engine roared. We loaded every hunter aboard while the cavern folded around us. I aimed the train at the ceiling. There were no tracks going up, so I planted gravity above us. The entire train fell toward the city. He accelerated upward through stone, green fire, buried foundations, and the remains of the guild's testing floor. The building jumped 6 feet when we burst out of the ground. The train crossed the lobby, tore through the front doors, and launched into the afternoon sky. People on the street looked up as a 100-car monster train flew over the city with an umbrella tied to the front. I used Vector Claim to bend our momentum around the tallest tower. We circled it twice, slowing down. On the third loop, Marcus's solar threads caught the train. Gavin cut the cars loose one by one. Harper steered each section into an empty avenue. The engine landed in the fountain outside the guild. I stepped out with the spoon in my hand. The black core was gone. For the first time that day, I had not planned for what happened next. A man sat on the broken fountain behind me. He wore a dark coat with no dust on it. His hair was tied back. In one hand, he held the black core I had scooped from the boss. In the other, he held a fruit shaped like a beating heart. I had seen him enter the gate with the last group of hunters, but he had never joined the fight. He had walked behind the chaos like a shadow waiting for dinner. His name was Elias. He was an S-rank hunter known for clearing dungeons without leaving bodies behind. Not monster bodies, not broken walls, nothing. Gates simply closed after he entered, as if the dungeon had been swallowed whole. Elias pressed the black core into the heart-shaped fruit. The fruit opened a mouth and ate it. A branch of black crystal grew around his wrist. He looked at me with calm, curious eyes. "You carry too many endings," he said. Then the shadow under the fountain opened, and Elias sank into it. I reached for him with 100 hands. All 100 invisible arms came back missing their fingers. The heart-shaped fruit had bitten them off. That was interesting. Behind me, the city cheered because the gate was closed, and everyone was alive. Marcus climbed onto the broken train and accepted the cheers with both hands raised. Gavin watched me instead. Harper picked up the dead scanner that had fallen from her coat, opened its memory core, and turned the screen toward me. 100 separate skill signatures glowed on the display. The number flickered, tried to become 101, then caught fire. Harper blew out the flame. "What are you?" she asked. I looked at the shadow where Elias had disappeared. "A little behind schedule," I said. Because the train dungeon had taken 12 minutes, my fastest climb needed 47. And somewhere in the city, a man who ate dungeon cores had just stolen 35 minutes from me. The city celebrated for exactly 11 minutes. That was how long it took Marcus to turn the broken train into a stage, how long it took Gavin to answer 20 questions without admitting I had saved him, and how long it took Harper to rebuild her scanner from pieces of the fountain. The new scanner was the size of a suitcase. She pointed it at me from across the street. It screamed. Harper kicked it until the screaming stopped. I was still B rank. The train dungeon had given me a mountain of experience, but Elias had stolen the core before its final reward reached me. My fastest climb was still safe at 47 minutes, which was annoying. More importantly, the black fruit he carried was not a normal skill. I had seen something similar during my 70-second climb. A dungeon called the Black Orchard had grown under a dead volcano. its trees fed on monster cores. Every fruit contained a different disaster. One fruit produced a hurricane when peeled, one turned rain into teeth, one hatched into a walking forest that chased me for 2 days because I had insulted its roots. I had destroyed that dungeon's heart and kept a skill called Seedless Flame, which burned powers away from the things they touched. Ilias had somehow cultivated the same kind of fruit outside the dungeon. That meant he was feeding it cores. Harper had reached the same conclusion. She shoved the repaired scanner under my nose. A black line crossed the city map, leading from the subway gate toward the western skyline. At the end of the line floated a giant stone ring surrounded by clouds. The Meteor Coliseum had arrived that morning. It appeared over the city once every 3 years. Hunters entered, fought through living trials, and earned rare abilities from the arena's core. The event had already drawn thousands of spectators. Giant screens hovered between the buildings. Food carts filled the streets. Nobody knew a dungeon eater was heading toward it. Marcus overheard us. He did not believe Ilias was a threat. He said the subway core had probably been a harmless trophy, and the black fruit was just an unusual storage item. Then he looked at me, looked at the crowd, and did what Marcus always did when reality became uncomfortable. He challenged it to a performance. Meteor Coliseum's main trial allowed open combat between qualified hunters. Marcus announced that I had used hidden artifacts to create the illusion of multiple skills. He said the city deserved to know whether I was a powerful hunter or a dangerous trick. The crowd loved that. They had watched the train fly through the city, but Marcus's solar threads had been visible from every window. My best work had happened underground or inside the engine. To most people, I was still an F rank with suspicious cutlery. Gavin stepped forward before I could answer. He wanted the first duel. His expression was not cruel anymore. He had felt my attacks inside the train. He knew something impossible was happening, and unlike Marcus, he wanted to test it with his own blades. Harper told me entering the arena would be reckless. Then she added that she had always wanted to steal a piece of its floor. We went. The Meteor Coliseum floated a mile above the city. Its outer ring was made of black stone covered in glowing cracks. Waterfalls poured from its underside and vanished into clouds. Hundreds of smaller platforms circled the main arena, each carrying monsters, weapons, or whether waiting for a match. We reached it by stepping through a gate of blue fire in the street. The moment I entered, the Coliseum scanned my rank. A giant F appeared above my head. The audience laughed so loudly the clouds shook. The Coliseum had measured my reset rank, not my current level. The subway had raised my body to B, but the mark on my soul still declared me F until I reached the next major threshold. That happened sometimes. Rank crystals hated me almost as much as normal spoons did. Marcus entered after me. A blazing S appeared above him. The audience shouted his name. Gavin received an A. Harper received a C, which offended her because she claimed engineering should count twice if the machine could bite. The first trial began before anyone could argue. 1,000 weapons fell from the sky. They landed point first around us. Swords, axes, spears, chains, hammers, bows, and several objects that looked like farm tools designed by angry ghosts. Each weapon grew stone legs. The arena announced that we had to survive for 10 minutes. Marcus raised one hand and filled half the arena with sunlight. Gavin drew both blades. Harper opened her coat and released a flock of mechanical beetles. I picked up a pebble. One of my retained skills was Common Throw. It had started as an E-rank skill during my 12th climb. At S-rank, it made any ordinary object ignore the first barrier it touched. I had kept it because powerful people never respected pebbles. I threw the pebble passed through the first walking sword without slowing down. Patient Ember marked it. The pebble passed through the next weapon, then the next. Each hit made Common Throw stronger. Vector Claim adjusted its direction by a fraction after every impact. Black Thread Ring stored the pebble's first movement and replayed it each time it began to slow. The pebble became a gray line. It crossed the arena 10,000 times in 1 second. Every living weapon stopped. For one quiet moment, they remained standing. Then 1,000 weapons fell into neat piles. The pebble returned to my hand, glowing red. The audience did not laugh. Harper's mechanical beetles landed on her shoulders, as if embarrassed they had not helped. Gavin rolled his neck and stepped into the center of the arena. Our duel began. He moved before the signal finished. Gavin's style was built around speed, but speed was not the dangerous part. His blades compressed wind into invisible edges. Every swing left a delayed cut in the air. Dodge the sword and the wind hit later. Block the wind and he was already behind you. He crossed the arena in a silver blur and attacked from 7 directions. I used second thought. The trait gave me 1 instant of accelerated thinking whenever danger touched my skin. Gavin's first wind edge shaved 1 thread from my hoodie. The world slowed. I saw all 7 attacks. I also saw the audience, the clouds, Marcus standing with folded arms, Harper prying a glowing brick from the arena floor, and a dark speck moving along the outer ring. Elias was already here. I had no time to chase him, because Gavin's blades were 1 inch from my neck. I activated Frozen Moment and named my hoodie string. The string stopped moving. My whole body kept moving around it. The fixed string became a pivot. I spun horizontally under Gavin's blades, kicked one wind edge upward, and used Vector Claim to bend the remaining 6 into a circle. Gavin landed inside a ring of his own invisible cuts. He smiled. Then he sliced the circle apart. The shattered wind became a tornado. Thunder Feast sent static inside the storm. I opened my mouth, swallowed the lightning forming between the spinning air, and converted it into speed. Gavin and I disappeared. To the audience, the arena simply began exploding. Stone burst upward in lines as we crossed blades. Clouds split. Every delayed wind cut left by Gavin became a trap, but I planted gravity orchard seeds in them. His own attacks gained weight and fell as silver rain. He ran across the falling cuts. I ran across their sound using my soul-bound boots. He created a cyclone shaped like a spear. I used Hollow Stomach to swallow the empty space in its center. Without a center, the cyclone folded into a spinning ring. I caught it on the bent spoon. Gavin attacked again while I balanced his cyclone like a noodle. His left blade aimed high. His right blade stayed low. The real attack was the delayed cut behind my ankle. Bone memory recognized the pattern from our fight inside the train. I did not dodge. I stepped into it. The wind cut my boot string. Laughing Danger activated because getting serious over a boot string was ridiculous. My reactions doubled. 0 step erased the distance between my spoon and Gavin's forehead. I tapped him once. The spoon scooped the momentum from every step he had taken during the duel. All that speed gathered in the bowl. I flicked it upward. Gavin launched into the clouds. He vanished through one cloud, then another. 10 seconds later, he fell back into the arena with both blades spread like wings. He landed on one knee, creating a crater, and tried to stand. The boot string he had cut wrapped around his ankle. Black thread ring replayed my earlier spin through the string. Gavin's legs crossed. He fell face first. The arena declared me the winner. I offered him a hand. Gavin took it, laughing even with a mouth full of dust. That was when his doubt finally changed into hunger. He no longer wanted to expose me. He wanted to catch up. Marcus entered before the applause ended. The Colosseum repaired itself beneath his feet. Broken stone flowed together. Clouds darkened around the ring. The giant S over his head became a miniature sun. Marcus did not draw a weapon. He never needed one. Solar threads spilled from his fingers, thin as hair and bright enough to leave white scars across my vision. 1 thread could cut a tower. 10 could hold a collapsing gate. Marcus created 10,000. The sky became a golden web. He pulled. Every thread crossed the arena at once. I opened the umbrella. The first 1,000 threads struck the black fabric and wrapped around it. The umbrella blocked heat, force, magic, and on one memorable occasion, a giant sneeze. It could not block being tied shut. Marcus twisted his wrist. The threads closed around me like a glowing cocoon. The audience shouted as the web lifted me into the air. Marcus compressed it until the stone beneath me melted. Then the cocoon became empty. I had used a retained skill called Shed Position. Once per battle, it left my location behind like an old coat. The threads had captured the place where I had been standing. I appeared above Marcus. He had expected that. A second sun opened behind him. Solar threads burst from every point of light and pierced me through the chest, arms, and legs. At least, that was what the audience saw. The threads had actually pierced my soul-bound coat. I had kept it during my 51st reset because it could continue wearing itself for 3 seconds after I stepped out. The empty coat spread its arms dramatically while Marcus stared at it. I came up through the floor. Common Throw let my hand ignore the first barrier, including the arena surface. I grabbed Marcus's ankle from inside solid stone and planted a gravity orchard seed. He exploded into light before I could pull. Marcus reappeared on the far side of the arena. His body was made of sunlight now. Every solar thread connected to him. He rose into the sky and dragged the miniature sun down behind his shoulders. The temperature climbed. The audience barriers turned red. Waterfalls beneath the Colosseum became steam. Marcus had used this attack to erase an S-rank dragon from the sky. He called it Dawnfall. I called Pocket Sun. My pea-sized star appeared over my palm. The audience started laughing again. Marcus's sun covered half the arena. Mine could hide behind a grape. Then Final Echo repeated Pocket Sun. 2 tiny stars orbited my hand. I used 100 hands to add invisible palms around them. Gravity Orchard pulled the stars together, but Frozen Moment stopped them 1 fraction before contact. Endless Furnace poured mana into the trapped collision. The two tiny suns screamed. I held them apart like the jaws of a glowing animal. Marcus dropped Dawnfall. I released Frozen Moment. My stars collided. A narrow beam of white light punched upward. Did not overpower Dawnfall. That would have wasted energy. Vector Claim bent Marcus's descending sun around the beam. Solar fire curved into a ring, circled the Colosseum, and wrapped around the giant S above Marcus's head. His own rank symbol caught fire. I used Common Throw on the bent spoon. The spoon passed through the first barrier, entered Dawnfall, and scooped out the attack center. Without its core, the giant sun became a hollow shell. I put the shell over Marcus. He hung inside a bubble of his own fire, perfectly unharmed and completely trapped. The audience stared. Harper had stopped stealing floor pieces. Gavin sat at the edge of the crater with his mouth open. I tapped the fire bubble with one finger. Black thread ring replayed Marcus's first pull on the solar threads. All 10,000 threads yanked him downward. Marcus hit the arena so hard the entire Colosseum tilted. The miniature sun above his rank symbol went out. The arena declared me the winner. For 3 seconds, nobody made a sound. Then the outer ring exploded. A black tree erupted from the stone. Its branches wrapped around the Colosseum core, a blue sphere the size of a house hidden beneath the western stands. Heart-shaped fruit covered the tree. Each fruit opened a mouth. Ilias stood on the highest branch. He had used our duel to reach the core. Marcus broke free from the fire bubble and sent solar threads across the arena. Ilias raised one black fruit. It bit the threads and swallowed the light. The fruit grew larger. Gavin launched wind blades. Another fruit ate those. Harper fired every mechanical beetle she had. The fruit ate them too, paused and spat out the screws. I used Seedless Flame. Colorless fire crossed the arena and touched the black tree. The first branch lost its ability to feed. It cracked. Ilias looked surprised for the first time. Then he drove one hand into the Colosseum core. The blue sphere turned black. The meteor Colosseum opened. Not like a gate, like an egg. The main ring split into 8 sections. The smaller platforms circling it broke their chains. Every monster, weapon, storm, and living trial stored inside the arena fell toward the city. A stone elephant the size of a hotel dropped through the clouds. A flock of burning sharks followed it. Glass birds, thunder apes, iron snakes, and a whale carrying a jungle on its back spilled into the sky. The audience barriers failed. Thousands of people began falling. Elias pulled the blackened core from its chamber. The heart-shaped fruit swallowed it. A second crystal branch grew over his shoulder. Then he stepped backward into shadow and disappeared. I could have chased him. Instead, I jumped after the city. 100 invisible hands spread across the sky. 100 hands had limits. Each hand was only as strong as I was, but I had retained 10% of my base stats 100 times. My so-called F-rank body carried the buried strength of 10 complete S-rank hunters, and my current B-rank level multiplied all of it. The first invisible hand caught a falling child. The next caught a whole row of seats. 10 hands grabbed the stone elephant. 20 caught the burning sharks by their tails. The remaining hands pushed against the broken Colosseum. For one impossible second, I held the sky up. My bones cracked. Endless furnace burned through mana and refilled it. Patient ember marked the weight itself, making it easier to resist. Bone memory remembered every time I had lifted something heavier than I should have. Laughing Danger decided catching a stadium with invisible hands was absurd enough to triple my reactions. I roared and threw. The falling audience rose back into the clouds. Broken arena sections spun away from the city. The stone elephant landed on one platform. The sharks landed on another. The jungle whale rolled onto its side and began swimming through the air. My rank climbed to A. The power surge hit like a bomb inside my chest. I landed on the whale's nose. Below me, the city had become a battlefield. The cloud zoo was loose. And I still needed one more rank. The jungle whale opened its mouth beneath me. A forest grew on its tongue. Trees shot upward, wrapped around my legs, and tried to drag me between wooden teeth. I used Seedless Flame. Colorless fire ran down the roots, stripping away their ability to grow. The trees became ordinary wood. Then I used 100 hands to turn them into a staircase. I ran up the collapsing forest while the whale dove toward the city. Wind flattened my hoodie against my back. Glass birds filled the air ahead, each one reflecting sunlight through knife-shaped wings. I did not attack them. I planted gravity orchard seeds in the whale's skin and changed its pull. Every glass bird fell sideways. They slammed into the whale's mouth and lodged between its teeth. The whale bit down. Its own defense exploded into glittering fragments. A burning shark came from above. I opened the umbrella. Its nose hit the fabric, folded in half, and bounced backward into 3 more sharks. The impact filled the umbrella with heat. I closed it, trapped the fire inside, and tucked it under one arm. The umbrella shook like an angry kettle. Below me, Gavin landed on the back of a stone bird. He had tied his blades to its wings with compressed wind and was steering it through the falling monsters. Every time a burning shark approached, he cut the air beneath it and made it drop into an empty street. Harper had claimed one of the broken arena platforms. She drove the glowing brick she had stolen into its control chamber and made the whole slab obey her wrench. Mechanical beetles connected snapped runes while she stood on the edge, firing a cannon made from 3 weapon beasts and 1 concession stand. A bolt of blue energy hit the stone elephant. The elephant shrank to the size of a dog. Harper looked delighted. Then the effect wore off. The elephant returned to full size while standing on the same platform. The platform shot downward like a dropped plate. Harper rode it past me, still laughing, and slammed directly into a flock of iron snakes. The collision bent the snakes into a giant spring. Her platform bounced back into the sky. Marcus moved between the falling audience seats on threads of sunlight. He caught people one by one and lowered them to rooftops. For the first time since I had met him, he was too busy saving lives to make sure anyone saw him doing it. That was a better look for him. The jungle whale rolled. The entire forest on its back turned upside down. Rivers, boulders, and monsters fell toward the streets. I summoned the crystal rib for my 100th reset. The rib was longer than a bus and curved like a bow. Black starlight pulsed inside it. I drove one end into the whale's skin and pulled. The rib stretched. It had belonged to a creature that swam through empty space. Distance meant less to it than muscle. As I bent the rib, the gap between its ends widened far beyond its physical size. A bowstring of black light appeared, long enough to cross the city. I needed an arrow. Marcus saw what I was doing. He sent a bundle of solar threads into my hand. Gavin added a spiral of compressed wind. Harper fired her blue shrinking bolt through the center. I wrapped all 3 around the closed umbrella. The trapped shark fire inside it was still trying to escape. I placed the umbrella on the black bowstring and aimed at the sky. The city-sized bow bent. Every window below us rattled. I released. The umbrella became a streak of black fire. It punched through the falling river, gathered the water around itself, and dragged every boulder and monster into its wake. Gavin's wind twisted the debris into a spiral. Harper's bolt shrank the entire mass as it climbed. Marcus's solar threads held everything together. By the time the arrow reached the clouds, an avalanche the size of a neighborhood had become a marble wrapped around the umbrella tip. The umbrella opened. All the trapped fire came out. The marble exploded above the city as harmless rain, warm pebbles, and hundreds of very confused miniature monsters. One tiny iron snake landed in my hood and bit my ear. Laughing danger activated again. I flicked the snake so hard it crossed the horizon. The whale roared. A storm erupted from the jungle on its back. Lightning formed the shape of a giant ape and stepped out of the clouds. It had arms made from thunderheads and a chest full of spinning weather. The weather ape punched me. I raised the bent spoon. The spoon scooped the lightning from its fist, but not the wind. The remaining punch launched me through the whale's forest. I broke 12 trees, 1 stone temple, and a fruit stand that should not have existed on a flying monster. I landed in a lake on the whale's back. The lake stood up. It became a serpent of water and wrapped around my body. The weather ape dropped from the sky behind it, both fists charged with enough lightning to black out the city. I swallowed the lake. Hollow stomach took all of it at once. The water serpent vanished. The ape's fists met my face. For impact, I used Frozen Moment and named the lightning in its left hand. The left fist stopped. The right kept moving. The ape's body twisted around its frozen arm, missed me, and punched itself in the jaw. I spat the lake upward. The water hit the frozen lightning and became a tower of ice around the ape's arm. Gravity Orchard pulled the other end toward the whale. The ape was suddenly chained to the jungle by a frozen thunderbolt. Gavin arrived as a silver line and cut through its knees. Marcus dropped solar threads around its neck. Harper's bouncing platform hit it from behind. The weather ape folded into the lake bed. I put 1 foot on its back and used Patient Ember. Every attack we had landed burned brighter through the trait. I raised my fist. One of my retained skills was Honest Impact. It did nothing except multiply a bare-handed strike by the number of different skills I had used in the last minute. I had used 23. My punch hit the ape. The jungle whale bent in the middle. A circular shockwave cleared every cloud over the city. The weather ape broke into sparks. The sparks became experience. My A rank level surged. Not enough. The whale was still alive and it was dropping fast. We had less than a minute before its body crushed the western district. I ran toward the center of the jungle. The whale's core beat somewhere beneath the roots. Harper's scanner pointed toward a mountain growing from its spine, but the readings kept changing. The core moved with every heartbeat. Black crystal branches were already spreading through the forest. Elias had reached the whale before us. I saw him on the mountain, one hand pressed into the bark of a giant tree. His heart-shaped fruit had opened wide. Roots pierced the whale's body, dragging streams of blue energy toward him. I used 0 step. 1 step crossed the forest. The second crossed the mountain. At A rank, 0 step could finally erase miles again. I appeared beside Elias and swung the spoon at his wrist. A black fruit bit the spoon. The slime core in the bowl tried to scoop its hunger. The fruit tried to eat the spoon's power. For 1 second, both objects pulled on each other. Then the spoon belched. Every attack it had stored across my last 3 resets came out at once. Dragon fire, avalanche force, subway momentum, thunder, and half a bowl of very old soup exploded between us. Elias flew through the mountain. I flew the other way. The jungle whale rolled again. The city filled my vision below. 30 seconds remained. Elias' roots had exposed the core. It was not one object. It was a chain of blue hearts moving along the whale's spine, passing energy from one to the next. I understood why Harper's scanner could not find it. The whale had a heartbeat the length of a city block. I could not destroy every heart before impact, so I attacked the beat. Frozen moment could stop one named object. I named the pause between heartbeats. The pause stopped moving. A moment of silence stretched through the whale. Its hearts waited for the next beat. The next beat never arrived. The creature froze in the sky. Not completely, its body still fell, its muscles still moved, but its inner rhythm had become trapped in one endless pause. The core chain appeared all at once, every blue heart lit along the spine. Elias' eyes widened. He sent black roots toward the nearest heart. I used 100 hands. Invisible fingers closed around the entire chain. Final echo repeated 100 hands. Another 100 hands appeared. 200 palms pulled in opposite directions. The whale's spine opened. Blue hearts rose into the air like lanterns. Elias' fruit swallowed 3. I hit the rest with seedless flame. The colorless fire burned away their ability to feed anything. Elias' roots withered before reaching them. Then I used common throw. I threw one harmless pebble through the first heart. The pebble ignored the outer shell. Vector claim bent it through the second, then the third. Patient ember marked each one. Black thread ring replayed the throw. Final echo repeated the skill. The pebble became a loop of gray light, passing through every heart faster and faster. One by one, the cores cracked. Experience poured into me. The giant F that still floated over my head split down the middle. Light burst through the crack. My rank jumped from A to S. The power of my 101st climb arrived all at once. My senses expanded across the city. I felt every falling monster, every broken platform, every solar thread, every gust made by Gavin's blades, and every machine Harper had forced to work through threats and violence. A new S-rank skill appeared. World Anchor. I could choose one thing and make it refuse change for 60 seconds. The reawakening window opened beside it. Reset to level 1 and F-rank. Retain 1 skill. Retain 10% of base stats. Retain 1 class trait. Retain 1 soul-bound equipment item. The option waited calmly while a flying whale fell toward millions of people. Not now, I said. I selected the city with World Anchor. For 60 seconds, the city refused to move. The jungle whale hit it. Buildings did not shake, roads did not crack, windows did not rattle. The entire western district became an unchangeable object beneath the impact. The whale was not unchangeable. It flattened. Its body spread across rooftops like an enormous green blanket. The remaining monster platforms crashed into it instead of the streets. Stone elephants, burning sharks, iron snakes, and weapon beasts sank into the jungle. Harper landed her platform on the whale's tail. Gavin sliced falling debris into harmless dust. Marcus caught the last broken section of the Colosseum with solar threads and lowered it onto the whale's back. I stood on the exposed spine while blue light rose around me. The timer in the corner of my vision read 39 minutes and 12 seconds. I had gone from F rank to S rank during one continuous disaster. My fastest climb was no longer 47 minutes. I had beaten it by almost 8. That should have felt satisfying. Then Elias tore one of the 3 stolen hearts open. Blue energy inside turned black. A column of darkness shot into the sky. Far beyond the city, over the ocean, thunder answered. Clouds split in a straight line from the horizon to the stars. Something tall began rising from the water. At first, I thought it was a mountain. Then the mountain grew windows. The tower climbed out of the ocean, floor after floor, until its top vanished beyond the atmosphere. Storms wrapped around it in layers. One floor held a desert. Another held an upside-down sea. Another was dark enough to hide the moon. The Tower of Empty Weather had awakened. It was a catastrophe dungeon older than the city. During my previous climbs, I had found fragments of its name carved into gate walls. The tower appeared when enough free dungeon cores gathered in one region. It did not care who gathered them or why. Its opening was a natural disaster with architecture. Elias had fed it the subway core, the Colosseum core, and 3 hearts from the jungle whale. He stepped into a black doorway growing from the broken mountain. Before the shadow closed, he looked back at me. "You climb," he said. "I consume. Let us see which reaches the top first." Then he vanished toward the tower. The city below was safe. The cloud zoo was dying. Thousands of people were staring at the S above my head, and Marcus was staring harder than all of them. He walked across a solar thread and landed beside me. For once, he did not smile for the audience. He said I had won our duel. It was only 5 words, but they cost him more effort than Dawnfall. Gavin landed on my other side and asked whether I planned to chase Elias. Harper's platform crashed nearby. She climbed out carrying the stolen Colosseum brick, 3 monster engines, and a tiny stone elephant under one arm. She said the flying train could be repaired in 6 minutes. I looked at the tower piercing the sky. The reawakening window still floated beside me, waiting for a decision. I closed it without choosing. The 101st reset could wait. I had already spent 100 lives learning how to climb. Now someone had built me a tower. Harper repaired the flying train in 5 minutes and spent the 6th adding horns. She claimed the horns improved balance. They did not. The dead engine rested on the flattened jungle whale, while mechanical beetles dragged train cars from the streets. Harper fused pieces of the Meteor Colosseum into the frame, installed the conductor's clock as a steering wheel, and mounted the tiny stone elephant on the front for luck. Marcus supplied solar threads to hold the engine together. Gavin cut away anything Harper pointed at. I placed Pocket Sun inside the furnace again. The train woke with a roar that blew every leaf off the whale. We launched from the city before World Anchor's effect ended. The engine climbed through clouds, dragging 7 mismatched cars and a tail of golden light. People below raised phones and cheered. They were not laughing at the F-rank anymore. That should have felt strange. It did not. Praise and mockery were both weather. I had survived worse. The Tower of Empty Weather stood 80 miles offshore. Its base had split the ocean into 4 rotating walls. Lightning moved downward through the water. Snow rose from the waves. A hurricane circled the tower backward, pulling ships away instead of inward. The closer we flew, the less the sky obeyed itself. Rain stopped in midair and became stairs. Clouds hardened into stone. The sun appeared beneath us for 3 seconds, then fell into the sea with a hiss. Harper's compass spun so quickly it melted. Marcus used solar threads to keep the train level. Gavin stood on the roof, cutting apart bolts of sideways lightning. I drove by turning the conductor's clock whenever the tower looked slightly less impossible in one direction. A mile from the entrance, the backward hurricane caught us. The wind did not push the train away. It pushed our destination away. The tower entrance remained directly ahead, but every second we moved toward it, the distance increased. The engine screamed. Pocket Sun burned brighter. The wheels spun against empty air. I had already beaten a train that ate distance. This storm was greedier. It ate arrival. Zero Step could erase distance, but there was no stable distance to erase. Vector Claim could redirect force, but the hurricane was not moving us. It was moving the idea of where we wanted to be. So I chose a destination behind us. I pointed the train back toward the city and told Harper to reverse every engine. She did not ask why. That was one of her best qualities. Pocket Sun flipped inside the furnace. Marcus reversed the pull of every solar thread. Gavin cut the wind behind the final car. The train shot backward. Because our chosen destination was now the city, the hurricane pushed that destination farther away. The tower rushed toward us. We crossed the final mile in 2 seconds and hit the entrance at full speed. The stone doors were closed. I summoned the umbrella, opened it in front of the engine, and used Vector Claim to turn our forward momentum upward. The train climbed the face of the tower. Windows flashed past. Each one showed a different disaster. Red snow, floating oceans, forests bent by wind, stars falling indoors. Harper fired the shrinking cannon at the stone doors below us. The doors became small enough to fit in her pocket. The entrance opened. I redirected our momentum downward. The train performed a perfect loop, something trains were never supposed to do, and plunged through the doorway upside down. Gravity changed the instant we entered. The first floor contained an ocean on the ceiling. Our train fell upward. We crashed into dark water filled with glowing fish. Bubbles sank past the windows. Waves pressed against the ceiling far below us. The tower doorway vanished behind a wall of black sea. Harper pulled a lever. Metal fins unfolded from the train cars. The tiny stone elephant on the front began spraying bubbles from its trunk. Our flying train became a submarine so naturally that I suspected Harper had planned for this before the tower appeared. A bell rang in the deep. Every glowing fish turned toward us. their mouths opened wider than their bodies. Gavin cut through the first school with wind blades, but the water compressed the attacks into spinning drills. Marcus filled the sea with solar threads. The threads heated the water and created a cloud of boiling steam around us. That attracted something larger. A shadow passed over the train, then another. A creature shaped like a manta ray unfolded from the darkness. It was wider than the entire city district we had just saved. Storm clouds moved under its skin. Long tendrils trailed behind it, each one ending in a bell. When the bells rang, the ocean changed direction. The first ring made the water fall left. The train slammed into a tower wall that had not been there a second earlier. The second ring made the water fall forward. Every fish became a glowing bullet. The third ring made the water fall into the ray's mouth. The whole ocean began draining toward it. Harper drove the train engine beyond its limit, but the current dragged us backward. Marcus anchored solar threads to the walls. The stone peeled away. Gavin cut the ray's tendrils, but every severed bell grew a new current. I opened hollow stomach. The skill could store any non-living thing I swallowed. Water was non-living, and ocean was ambitious. I leaned out the engine window and drank. First mouthful nearly dislocated my jaw. Hollow stomach expanded inside my soul. Water vanished around the train in a widening funnel. Fish, steam, and broken stone spun toward me. I filtered out the living creatures with 100 hands and swallowed everything else. The ocean level dropped. The ray rang every bell at once. Water attacked me from 12 directions. I drank faster. My body inflated exactly 0 inches because hollow stomach stored things somewhere that common sense could not reach. The pressure still shook my bones. Endless furnace burned mana. Patient ember marked the ocean after the first swallow, making every later mouthful easier. Within 10 seconds, I had swallowed enough water to reveal half the floor. The ceiling ocean became a hanging lake. The manta ray flopped onto exposed stone. It looked much less majestic without water. Gavin landed on its back and cut through the storm clouds under its skin. Marcus tied its wings with solar threads. Harper drove the train directly into one bell and used the tiny stone elephant as a battering ram. I released Pocket Sun inside hollow stomach. The stored ocean boiled. My cheeks glowed. I aimed at the ray, then I spat. A beam of superheated steam crossed the floor. It hit the ray, carried it through 3 stone pillars, and pinned it against the far wall. The remaining ocean flashed into fog. Lightning inside the creature's skin spread through the steam. Thunder Feast pulled the lightning into me. My speed climbed. I ran across droplets before they could fall, planted gravity orchard seeds along the ray's spine, and used Honest Impact after 12 different skills. My punch folded one wing over the other. The ray became a storm-filled dumpling. Gavin drove both blades through its exposed core. Marcus tightened the solar threads. Harper fired the train cannon from 2 feet away. The boss burst into blue rain. A staircase appeared where its body had been. Black roots already covered the steps. Elias was ahead of us. We drove the train up the staircase because walking seemed disrespectful. The second floor was a desert made of seconds. Every grain of silver sand contained a tiny ticking sound. Giant hourglasses floated in the sky. A black sun moved backward over the dunes. The moment our train touched the sand, rust spread across the engine. 10 years passed over the metal in one breath. Harper screamed louder than she had during any monster attack. She leaped out, struck the engine with her wrench, and deployed a field of mechanical beetles. The beetles replaced parts faster than the desert aged them, but they rusted too. Marcus wrapped the train in solar threads to slow the decay. Gavin tested one foot on the sand. His boot became dust. He pulled his foot back and glared at the desert, as if it had insulted his technique. The exit stood on a stone platform 12 miles away. Between us waited giant scorpions with hourglass bodies. Sand poured through their transparent shells. Each grain that reached the bottom made their claws move faster. We could not cross without losing years from everything that touched the ground. I summoned the soul-bound boots that could stand on anything for 1 second. Then I stepped on a ticking sound. The boots treated it as solid. I stood 1 inch above the sand. Bone memory remembered the movement. Black thread ring stored it. Final echo repeated the skill. I ran on time. Each step landed on the tiny tick inside a grain of sand. To everyone else, I crossed the desert without touching the ground. To me, the world became a road of sounds. Gavin watched once and understood the rhythm. His wind could not stand on sound, but it could lift sand without touching it. He swept both blades, created a rolling wave, and surfed on the air beneath the grains. Marcus formed a bridge from solar threads. The desert aged the light, turning gold strands red, then white, then colorless, but he replaced them with every step. Harper put the train wheels on top of 4 hourglasses and used them as sled runners. We crossed together. The scorpions attacked halfway. One claw closed around my shadow. My body stopped moving while my shadow aged. I felt memories trying to peel away, not important ones, but tiny things. The taste of the sandwich, the sound of the guild laughter, the exact angle of Gavin's first strike, bone memory held them in place. I used shed position and left the trapped location behind. My coat continued standing inside the claw while I appeared on the scorpion's back. The coat aged 200 years in 3 seconds and became dust. It returned to my soul armory, deeply offended. I planted a gravity orchard seed in the top half of the scorpion's hourglass body and another in the bottom. Then I reversed one seed. The sand inside stopped falling down. Half fell up. The grains collided in the narrow center and jammed. The scorpion froze between seconds. Gavin cut both claws. Marcus burned through its legs. Harper drove the train over its tail. 3 more scorpions rose from the dunes. I used final echo on Gravity Orchard, then 100 hands to slap seeds across all of them. Every hourglass jammed. I connected the gravity points and pulled. The scorpions flew together, tails first, and locked into a giant silver wheel. I pushed the wheel. It rolled across the desert, crushing every smaller monster in its path. We followed behind it inside the strip of sand it had already aged. Harper drove the train over the fresh track while shouting encouragement at the rusting engine. At the exit platform, the silver wheel hit a floating hourglass and shattered it. The entire desert paused. A black tree grew from the broken glass. Elias stood beneath it, holding a fruit full of blue water. He had already swallowed the first floor's core. Crystal branches now covered one side of his chest. Marcus attacked immediately. Solar threads crossed the platform. Elias raised one fruit. It ate the light. Gavin came from behind with a wind edge compressed until it was almost invisible. A second fruit swallowed that too. Harper fired the shrinking cannon. A third fruit bit the blue bolt and became the size of an apple. I threw Pocket Sun. A fourth fruit opened its mouth. Before it could swallow the tiny star, I used White Silence, an S-rank skill from my 27th reset. It froze energy by removing vibration instead of lowering temperature. Pocket Sun became a bead of motionless heat. The fruit swallowed it. Then I used Final Echo on White Silence and froze the fruit's black hunger. Its mouth stopped working halfway closed. I released the sun. The fruit exploded from the inside. Elias moved before the fire reached him. Black branches formed a spear along his arm. He thrust once. The platform split. Not from force, the spear ate the stone's ability to remain connected. A black line crossed the floor, the floating hourglass, and the distant dunes. Everything along it came apart without sound. I used World Anchor on our half of the platform. The stone refused to split. Elias's spear stopped 1 inch from my chest. For 60 seconds, the space I had chosen would not change. I grabbed the spear. Vector Claim redirected its consuming pull back along the branch. Black crystal cracked up Elias' arm. He released the weapon and jumped into the black tree. The trunk opened around him like water. I used Zero Step and followed. For 1 instant, I entered the space inside his roots. It was larger than the tower floor. Thousands of black branches stretched through darkness. Heart-shaped fruit hung in every direction. I saw pieces of consumed dungeons trapped inside them. An ocean storm, a burning forest, a city of bones, a moon with teeth. At the center floated a seed the size of a fist. It had no mouth yet, but everything around it leaned inward. Elias stood beside the seed. The calm look on his face had become something sharper. "The summit holds its shell," he said. "When seed and shell meet, hunger will have a body." That was all he gave me. The roots snapped shut. I used shed position before they could trap me and returned to the desert platform, leaving another soul-bound coat inside. The roots ate it. My armory was going to complain for weeks. Elias's tree collapsed into a single black vine that climbed through the ceiling. The 3rd floor opened above us. No stairs appeared. Instead, the ceiling began raining boulders upward. Harper looked at the train, now covered in rust, scorpion parts, ocean salt, and one tiny stone elephant. She raised her wrench. The engine roared back to life. We had crossed 2 impossible floors in less than 20 minutes. The tower had not even become difficult yet. The boulders did not fall from the ceiling. They fell toward it. The 3rd floor was an open canyon turned upside down. A red sky spread beneath us. Cliffs hung from above like stone teeth. Thousands of rocks ripped free from the canyon floor and shot upward into the ceiling, where they vanished into storm clouds and fell up again. There was no stable ground. Harper aimed the train at the nearest cliff and drove directly into the boulder rain. The first rock hit the engine hard enough to bend the tiny stone elephant backward. The second tore off a wheel. The third entered one window, crossed 2 cars, and left through the roof with Gavin standing on it. Gavin rode the boulder upward. He crouched on the spinning stone, cut 3 approaching rocks in half, and jumped to the next one. Wind gathered under his feet. he turned the endless barrage into stepping stones. Marcus wrapped solar threads around the train and pulled it between impacts. Every thread caught a different cliff. The engine swung through the canyon like a metal pendulum. I climbed onto the front car and planted gravity orchard seeds in the largest boulders. The rocks were already falling up. I made them fall sideways. A path opened. Harper drove through it while I moved the gravity seeds ahead of us. We weaved between stone missiles, crossed a gap wider than the city, and reached a cliff covered in giant nests. The nests opened. Rock birds unfolded from inside them. Each bird had wings made of stacked cliffs. Their beaks were tunnels. When they cried, landslides came out. The first cry buried the train. Stone filled every window. The engine stopped. Marcus's solar thread snapped. Gavin vanished behind a wall of gravel. I used hollow stomach and swallowed one rock, then another, then the entire landslide. The train emerged from the collapsing mountain, inside a bubble of empty air, my soul storage filled with enough stone to build a second city. I leaned toward the nearest bird and spat one pebble. Common throw made it ignore the first barrier. The pebble passed through the bird's cliff wing and entered the tunnel of its beak. Then I released the rest of the mountain behind it. The pebble pulled the stored stone through the same path. An entire landslide fired into the bird from the inside. Its body inflated, cracked, and burst into a flock of much smaller rocks. 3 more birds attacked. Gavin came out of the gravel riding one of them. He had cut a saddle into its back and tied the wing joints with wind. Marcus landed on the other wing, drove solar threads through the stone feathers, and forced the creature into a turn. They aimed it at the flock. Harper fired the train's shrinking cannon into its tail. The tail became tiny, the head stayed the same size, balance stopped being an option. The rock bird spun like a thrown hammer and crashed through the others. Cliffs shattered, boulders filled the canyon. I used vector claim to bend every impact toward the same point. The entire floor's falling stone gathered into one sphere above us. Gravity orchard compressed it. Pocket sun appeared in the center. The stone sphere became a glowing miniature planet. The boss rose from the red sky below. It had the body of a centipede and a mountain range for a shell. Each step created a new cliff. Its head opened into a quarry full of grinding teeth. I dropped the planet. The boulder rain pulled it upward. Gravity orchard pulled it downward. The 2 directions fought until the glowing sphere hung still. Frozen moment locked it there. The mountain centipede charged through the canyon. I released the skill when its head reached the sphere. Every direction returned at once. The miniature planet struck the boss from above, below, left, right, forward, and backward in the same instant. Its mountain shell collapsed inward. Pocket sun melted the compressed rock into glass. The centipede became a shining bridge across the canyon. Harper drove the train along its back. At the far end, we found another black tree with its core chamber empty. Elias had already fed the floor to his seed. A vine climbed through the next doorway. We followed. The 4th floor was silent rain. At first it looked harmless. A gray city stretched beneath a cloudy sky. Empty streets, blank towers, shallow water on the pavement. Fine rain drifted through the air. Then one drop touched Marcus. Every solar thread vanished. Another touched Gavin. The wind around his blades disappeared. A third struck my hand. Pocket sun went out. 100 hands closed. Vector claim became an empty shape in my soul. The rain erased active skills. Harper's train crossed the doorway behind us. The engine died. The glowing Colosseum parts became ordinary stone. The conductor's clock stopped ticking. The entire machine dropped into the street and slid through 3 buildings before coming to rest in a fountain. The tiny stone elephant broke off the front and landed upright. Harper picked it up, checked for damage, and looked relieved. Then the gray city moved. Shapes rose from the rainwater. They were tall, thin creatures made of wet paper and bone. Their faces were smooth. Their arms ended in long black hooks. Hundreds stepped from doorways, rooftops, and flooded tunnels. No mana came from them. The rain had erased their powers too. They did not need powers. The first creature crossed the street with one silent step and swung at Marcus. He blocked with his forearm. The hook cut through his sleeve and carved a line across his skin. Marcus hit back without solar threads. His punch snapped the creature in half and sent both pieces through a wall. He looked almost surprised that his fist worked. Gavin met 3 creatures at once. His blades no longer produced wind, but bone memory was not unique to me. Years of training remained in his muscles. He ducked a hook, turned inside the second attack, and cut through all 3 necks with one clean spin. Harper opened her coat. None of her mechanical beetles moved. She sighed, took out the largest wrench I had ever seen, and hit a creature so hard its blank face folded around the tool. I had lost 100 active skills. I still had 100 stacks of retained base stats. I caught the next hook between 2 fingers. The creature pulled. I did not move. I pulled back. The creature crossed the street, 2 buildings, and 1 cloud before disappearing into the gray sky. The others stopped. My class traits still worked because most were carved into my body rather than cast through mana. Bone memory guided every movement. Second thought accelerated my mind when a hook touched my hoodie. Patient Ember marked anything I struck. Laughing danger increased my reactions because fighting an army in skill erasing rain with a spoon was exactly its favorite kind of problem. I summoned the spoon. Soulbound equipment survived the rain. The black umbrella appeared in my other hand. The boots formed on my feet. Black thread ring tightened around one finger. My dramatic coat dropped over my shoulders, still missing part of one sleeve after being eaten by Elias roots. Then I opened the rest of my soul armory. 96 pieces of equipment fell into the street. A red frying pan, a silver rope, a hammer made from a bell tongue, a flute carved from dragon bone, a lantern containing permanent midnight, a shovel that could dig through sound. A chair with 4 legs and no respect for gravity, a scarf that became longer whenever someone lied, a coin that always landed on its edge. A glass marble holding 1 square foot of ocean, a pair of gloves that could grab heat, a wooden door with no wall attached, a spear made from frozen rain. A kettle that screamed before danger, a broken star-shaped cookie cutter that I had kept only because the dungeon boss had been furious about it. The last item was a normal-looking frying fork. I did not remember keeping it. Harper stared at the pile. The army of blank creatures charged. Her eyes lit up. For Harper, 96 impossible objects were not clutter, they were permission. She kicked the soulbound chair onto its side, tied the silver rope between its legs, and mounted the red frying pan on the front. The bell hammer became an axle. The wooden door became a shield. Lantern powered the conductor's clock even without mana, because permanent midnight did not count as a skill. She shoved the tiny stone elephant into the center as a stabilizer. In less than 20 seconds, Harper built a vehicle that looked like a dining room had declared war. She jumped into the chair and pulled the screaming kettle like a horn. The machine charged. The frying pan struck the first creature and rang like a gong. The bell hammer stored the impact. The silver rope transferred it to the chair legs. Because the chair ignored gravity, every leg kicked in a different direction. Harper's vehicle began spinning down the street, hitting blank creatures with the wooden door, frying pan, shovel, and 1 very confused cookie cutter. Gavin ran beside it, using the spinning machine as cover. Marcus grabbed the silver rope and swung the entire vehicle around a corner. I jumped onto the back and played the dragonbone flute. The flute had only 1 note. It attracted anything that hated music. Every blank creature in the gray city turned toward us. Thousands poured into the streets. Harper yelled that I should have warned her. The screaming kettle had already done that. We drove straight into the army. Without skills, there were no glowing attacks, no suns, no gravity seeds, no invisible hands. The battle became pure movement. I threw the coin that always landed on its edge. Common throw was unavailable, but black thread ring could still replay a physical motion. The ring stored my throw. The coin struck 1 creature, bounced from its hook, landed on edge, and rolled through the crowd. The ring replayed the throw every time the coin slowed. It accelerated again and again, cutting ankles like a tiny wheel of bad luck. I swung the umbrella as a club. The cloth caught hooks and tangled arms. The bent spoon scooped ordinary kinetic energy even without mana and released it into my next strike. The bell hammer gathered impacts from Harper's vehicle until it glowed red. I hit the street with it. The stored force flipped an entire block. Buildings rose like cards. Blank creatures flew into the rain. Gavin jumped across the moving rooftops and cut them down. Marcus caught 1 falling tower with both hands, turned, and used it as a bat. He swept hundreds of creatures into the river. Marcus looked at the tower in his hands, then at me. I told him he had been wasting too much time with sunlight. He almost smiled. The gray city's central square opened. A giant emerged from beneath it. The creature was made from thousands of blank bodies pressed together. Hooks formed its teeth. Rainwater filled its chest. Every drop that touched it erased the physical strength of whatever it struck. The first swing hit Marcus's tower. The building became weightless dust. The second hit Gavin's blade. The metal forgot its hardness and bent around the hook. The third came for Harper's machine. I stepped in front of it. The giant's fist hit my umbrella. The black fabric lost its defensive power. For the first time since I had kept it, the umbrella became an ordinary umbrella. It folded. The punch continued into my arm. 10% of 1 S-rank body vanished from my strength. Then another 10%. The rainwater inside the fist was erasing my retained stats layer by layer. I could not let it finish. I opened the normal umbrella inside its fist. Metal ribs expanded between the giant's fingers. They were not powerful anymore, but they were still metal. Bone memory remembered every lock, lever, trap, and joint I had studied across 100 climbs. I twisted the handle. The umbrella jammed the creature's hand open. Marcus grabbed one finger. Gavin wrapped the silver rope around another. Harper drove her chair machine between the knuckles. We pulled. The giant's hand came apart into hundreds of blank creatures. They tried to reform. I used the dragon bone flute again. A single terrible note made every piece turn toward me instead of the body. Harper threw the permanent midnight lantern into the open chest. Rainwater inside became dark. The blank creatures could no longer see which body they belonged to. They assembled backward, sideways, and upside down. Marcus climbed the confused giant without skills, using hooks as handholds. Gavin followed with his bent blade. Harper fired herself from the soul-bound chair by cutting the silver rope. I grabbed the bell hammer. All the force from the street battle remained inside it. The giant opened its mouth. I threw the hammer down its throat. The coin landed on edge beneath its feet at the same instant. Black thread ring replayed my throw. The hammer accelerated inside the giant. Every stored impact released at once. The creature did not explode outward. The rain erased outward force, so the force went down. The giant compressed into the street like wet paper under a stamp. The central square sank 100 feet. A circular wave crossed the gray city, knocking every remaining blank creature flat. The rain stopped. My 100 active skills returned with a shock that lit every window. Harper's broken train woke inside the fountain and launched through a building on its own. Gavin's bent blade straightened in a burst of wind. Solar threads poured from Marcus and wrapped the entire square before it could collapse farther. The umbrella unfolded in my hand, restored and furious. At the bottom of the crater, the floor core had already been removed. Elias' black vine continued upward, but the null rain had left something behind. A white mark spread across the crystal branches he had shed near the chamber. His consumed powers had been erased wherever the rain touched them. Elias had crossed the floor by hiding inside his roots, but even he had not escaped unharmed. Harper scanned the broken branch. Her device showed that the black seed inside him was growing faster than his body could contain. Every core made him stronger. Every core also made the hunger less interested in obeying him. That was the weakness I needed. The 5th floor opened above us. There was no air beyond the doorway. Lightning crawled through a perfect black void, branching from star to star. Giant shapes moved between the flashes. Harper looked at the wrecked train. Then she looked at my soul armory still scattered across the street. She picked up the gravity-defying chair. 5 minutes later, we entered the void aboard a dining table with rocket engines. The dining table entered the void at the speed of a bad idea. Harper had bolted 4 engine fragments under it, tied the gravity-defying chair to the front, and mounted the permanent midnight lantern in the center. The silver rope held all 4 of us to the table. The tiny stone elephant stood at the front like a captain. The moment we crossed the doorway, air vanished. Gavin's wind died. Marcus's shirt stopped moving. Harper's wrench floated from her hand. I used world anchor on the bubble of air around the table. For 60 seconds, our atmosphere refused to disperse. Harper grabbed her wrench and fired the engines. The table shot between stars. They were not distant stars. Each one was a fist-sized knot of lightning hanging in the black floor. Bright branches connected them in a web that stretched farther than sight. Dark creatures crawled along those branches. Some had wings, some had too many legs. All of them were flat, as if the void had pressed them between 2 invisible pages. The first creature dropped onto our table. It looked like a black crab made from night. Its claws closed around the edge and swallowed the wood's momentum. The engines fired, but the table stopped moving. Marcus tried solar threads. In the vacuum, the light traveled perfectly straight and cut 2 legs from the creature. The severed pieces did not drift away. They became small black comets and circled us. Gavin swung his blades. Without air, there was no wind to compress. His slash still carried speed, but the crab caught the blade between its claws and ate the motion. I summoned the gloves that could grab heat. One hand closed around the nearest lightning star. The glove treated its temperature like a solid handle. I pulled. The lightning knot stretched into a glowing rope. Thunder Feast drank part of it and turned the energy into speed. I wrapped the rest around the crab. The creature swallowed the lightning's momentum. It did not swallow the electricity. Marcus snapped his fingers. Solar threads pierced the lightning rope and divided it into a cage. The crab became a dark shape inside a miniature sun. Gavin drove both blades through its center, while Harper hit it with the tiny stone elephant. The crab burst into a cloud of black comets. Every comet circled the table faster. I used Frozen Moment and named the orbit. The circular movement stopped. The comets did not. They flew away in straight lines, striking other creatures along the lightning web. Dark shapes exploded in every direction. Experience became blue sparks in the void. World Anchor's timer reached 0. Our air bubble began expanding. I opened hollow stomach and spat out the ocean air I had accidentally stored during the first floor. A sphere of atmosphere formed around the table. Harper caught it inside a cage made from the silver rope and solar threads. Gavin inhaled, swung once, and filled the sphere with wind. His blades came alive. The first wind edge hit the boundary, circled the bubble, and returned behind him. He adjusted the angle. Soon thousands of compressed cuts orbited our little atmosphere like protective rings. We flew through the star web, inside a planet made of knives. Void creatures attacked in swarms. Gavin's wind rings cut them apart. Marcus turned the pieces into glowing dust. Harper aimed the dining table between lightning branches, while screaming directions at engines that had never been designed to work under anything, much less furniture. I stood on the front chair and used the spoon to scoop momentum from every creature we passed. The stored force built inside the bowl until it shook. A shadow blotted out the stars. The fifth floor boss unfolded from the blackness. It had no body in the normal sense. A ring of stone moons formed its spine. Lightning stretched between them like muscle. At the center hung a single enormous eye made of vacuum. Wherever the eye looked, movement disappeared. It looked at our table. The engines froze. Gavin's wind stopped. Marcus's light hung in place. Even my heartbeat slowed. The creature had not erased power. It had removed the empty space required for movement. Every particle around us became packed against the next. I could not raise my arm. Second thought activated when the pressure touched my skin. My mind accelerated inside a body that could not move. The eye controlled empty space. Hollow stomach stored non-living things I swallowed. The void was not a thing. But the lantern contained permanent midnight, and midnight was not empty. It was a soul-bound substance with rules of its own. I released the lantern. Darkness poured across the table. The eye had compressed every gap, but permanent midnight created its own interior space wherever it spread. 1 inch of darkness opened between my fingers. That was enough for 0 step. I erased the distance of 1 movement and raised the spoon. The stored momentum inside it did not need outside space. It already existed in the bowl. I poured it into the lantern's darkness. The midnight expanded like a black balloon. Space returned around us all at once. Harper's engines fired. Gavin's wind rings resumed. Marcus's light lanced forward. My heartbeat hit hard enough to crack a rib. The table launched directly at the eye. The boss compressed space again. I used World Anchor on the darkness around us. For 60 seconds, the interior space refused to close. We crossed the gap. Gavin cut the lightning muscles between the stone moons. Marcus tied each moon with solar threads. Harper drove the table through the center ring and dropped the gravity-defying chair into the eye. The chair refused to fall in any direction. The vacuum eye tried to pull it inward. The chair insisted that inward was optional. The boss trembled. I planted gravity orchard seeds in all 7 moons. Then I pointed every seed toward the chair. The moons crashed together. The eye became trapped between 7 colliding gravity fields and 1 piece of stubborn furniture. I threw Pocket Sun into the center. Final echo made a second. White silence froze the stars 1 fraction before collision. Marcus wrapped solar threads around them. Gavin filled the gaps with rotating wind. Harper aimed the table engines at the knot. I released everything. The void boss became a new star. Light filled the black floor. The stone moons melted into a glowing staircase. Air rushed from the exit above as the void cracked around us. Our dining table landed on the first step, missing 2 legs and most of its dignity. Harper patted it proudly. We climbed. The 6th floor was a red blizzard inside a volcano. Snowflakes burned, lava froze, icicles rose from the ground and exploded into sparks. The heat came from the snow, while the cold came from the fire. A herd of 6-legged beasts charged through the storm with furnaces in their chests. Their breath became frozen flame that stuck to whatever it touched. I opened the umbrella against the burning snow. The fabric caught the heat. The gloves grabbed cold from the lava. I held fire in one hand and winter in the other. Then I switched them. Vector claim redirected heat into the frozen lava and cold into the burning snow. The entire floor changed color. Red snow became harmless water. Frozen lava became a real river of fire. The beasts lost their footing. Gavin ran across the flowing lava on wind and cut the furnace doors from their chests. Marcus pulled the loose doors together with solar threads and made a shield the size of a house. Harper mounted it on the remains of the dining table and drove straight through the herd. I used 100 hands to grab every open furnace. Then I squeezed. 6 internal explosions launched the beasts into the volcano ceiling. They struck hanging glaciers, broke them loose, and buried themselves under mountains of ice. The floor boss rose from the central crater. It was a giant made from red snow with a heart of blue fire. Every step swapped heat and cold across the floor. Marcus's sunlight froze when it touched the giant. Gavin's wind caught fire. Harper's cannon produced a block of ice around itself and refused to fire. I activated Seedless Flame. The colorless fire touched the giant's chest and burned away the power that swapped temperatures. For 1 second, heat became heat again. Pocket sun hit the blue fire heart. White silence froze the red snow around it. The giant experienced a normal temperature difference for the first time in its life. It exploded so violently that the volcano turned inside out. We rode the blast through the exit on the furnace door shield. The 7th floor was a hurricane made of sound. There was no visible wind. Roars, screams, thunderclaps, and breaking stones spun around a tower of quiet air. Each sound had weight. A whisper could cut skin. A roar could crush buildings. Our furnace shield lasted 2 seconds. A distant cough hit it and folded the metal in half. The 4 of us fell into the storm. I summoned the soulbound boots and stepped on a scream. The sound became solid for 1 second. I jumped to a thunderclap, then a growl, then the sharp crack of Harper hitting the broken cannon with her wrench. Gavin could not cut sound with ordinary wind, so he began striking his blades together. Each clash created a note. He built a staircase from his own rhythm and ran upward beside me. Marcus sent solar threads through the hurricane. The threads vibrated with every passing sound, revealing the invisible currents. He turned the storm into a glowing map. Harper summoned the shovel that could dig through sound. She swung it into a roar and removed a tunnel from the noise. Silence opened ahead of us. We entered the tunnel while millions of weighted sounds crashed against its walls. Harper kept digging. I used 100 hands to hold the silence open. Gavin cut any vibration that leaked through. Marcus stitched the tunnel behind us. At the center of the hurricane floated a creature made from mouths arranged in a sphere. None had bodies. Each mouth produced a different disaster sound. One screamed with the force of an avalanche. One whispered hard enough to drill holes in stone. The largest mouth inhaled silence and exhaled explosions. The boss opened every mouth. I used the dragonbone flute. A single terrible note entered the storm. Every mouth stopped. The boss hated music. All its faces turned toward the flute. I threw the instrument through the central mouth. Common throw let it ignore the first barrier. The flute passed through the teeth and entered the creature's core. Black thread ring replayed the note from inside. The boss tried to scream louder. Patient Ember had marked it with the first note. Every later note became more damaging. Final echo repeated the flute's sound without the flute. 100 hands grabbed the weighted noise and packed it into the central sphere. Gavin added the clash of his blades. Marcus vibrated every solar thread at once. Harper hit the floor with her wrench and produced a clang that offended physics. I used Frozen Moment to stop the sound inside the boss. All that force became trapped. Then I released it downward. The hurricane boss fired itself through 7 miles of tower floor and vanished into the red blizzard below. The sound storm collapsed into a calm blue sky. Black roots crossed the clouds overhead. We followed them to the 8th floor. That floor had no walls. 7 stone moons hung over a bottomless night. Each moon had forests, oceans, or ruins across its surface. Gravity shifted every few seconds, throwing the moons around one another like balls on a cosmic game table. Ilias stood on the smallest moon. The black seed floated behind him. It had grown. A mouth now ran across one side. Crystal roots connected it to every heart-shaped fruit in the orchard surrounding Ilias. The branches covered his torso, neck, and one side of his face. His left eye remained calm. His right eye had become a dark pit full of tiny teeth. At the center of the 7 moons, a white shell waited inside rings of storm. It looked like a giant egg made from clouds and bone. That was the summit's shell. The seed inside Ilias pulled toward it. Elias raised both hands. Every fruit opened. The first fruit released the ocean from the tower's first floor. A black wave crossed the moons. The second released silver desert time. Everything touched by the sand began aging. The third produced an army of rock birds. The fourth released null rain. The 5th opened into the vacuum. The 6th became a red blizzard. The 7th screamed with the hurricane boss's voice. Elias had not merely eaten the floor cores. He had stored their disasters. The 7 moons became the center of every impossible weather at once. Harper's scanner broke without even being pointed at him. Gavin tightened his grip. Marcus spread solar threads between the moons. I took out the spoon. Elias's seed looked hungry. I decided to feed it until it regretted having a mouth. The black ocean reached us first. I swallowed it with hollow stomach, then immediately spat it into the silver desert cloud. Water struck aging sand. The grains tried to steal time from every droplet. The ocean aged into steam, then ancient ice, then dust. I used vector claim to send the dust into the null rain. The rain erased its time-stealing power. Gavin cut the powerless cloud apart. Rock birds attacked from above. Marcus tied them together with solar threads. Harper fired the shrinking cannon from the dining table. 7 mountain-sized birds became the size of chickens. They landed on Marcus. For one strange second, the city's brightest S-rank stood covered in angry stone chickens. Laughing danger doubled my reactions. I scooped the birds into hollow stomach before Marcus could burn them. Vacuum eye looked at us, space compressed. I opened permanent midnight and gave us room. The red blizzard flooded that darkness with heat and cold. I caught both with the gloves and shaped them into 2 spheres. The hurricane mouth screamed. I stepped on the scream with my soul-bound boots, ran across the weighted sound and jumped between moons. Ilya sent black branches toward me. Each branch ended in a fruit mouth. They bit at my skills, swallowing gravity seeds, invisible hands, and the edge of zero step itself. I let them. The first fruit ate pocket sun. The second ate white silence. The third ate thunder feast after I filled it with lightning. The fourth ate the sound of the dragon bone flute. The fifth ate the heat I held in one glove. The sixth ate the cold in the other. Contradictory powers entered the orchard. Final Echo repeated the last skill and sent a second wave of cold through the same branches. Patient Ember marked every fruit after the first bite. Seedless flame slipped between them, burning away the orchard's ability to separate what it consumed. All 7 disasters mixed inside Ilya's. The black branches swelled. Fruit began biting other fruit. One released burning snow into the vacuum eye. Another aged its own roots. A third swallowed a hurricane and inflated like a balloon. Ilya's drove both hands into the moon beneath him. Black crystal spread through the stone and stabilized the orchard by feeding it an entire world of rock. The moon cracked. Gavin ran along the fracture, cutting roots faster than they could grow. Marcus used solar threads to pull the moon pieces apart, denying the orchard more food. Harper drove the dining table into a crater and activated every stolen engine at once. The smallest moon became a rocket. It shot toward Ilya's. He raised one arm. Black roots formed a wall. I used world anchor on the moon. For 60 seconds, its course refused to change. The moon hit him. The impact sent Ilya's his orchard and the black seed through 2 larger moons. Stone continents shattered. Oceans flew into space. The 7 gravity fields broke formation. Every moon began falling toward the white shell at the center. That was not my plan. The shell opened. A line appeared across its surface. Then teeth pushed through the clouds. The black seed tore free from Ilya's and flew toward it. I used 100 hands to grab the seed. 200 black mouths bit down on the invisible arms. I held on. Gavin cut roots behind it. Marcus wrapped the shell in solar threads. Harper aimed the dining table engines backward and rammed the seed from the front. For 1 second, we stopped it. Then Ilya's rose from the broken moon. Half his body had become crystal branches. Blood floated around him in dark beads. His calm expression was gone. He reached for the seed, not to control it, to keep it from leaving. That was when I understood the truth. Elias had believed he was growing the hunger. The hunger had been growing him. The seed opened its first full mouth. It bit through my invisible hands, Gavin's wind, Marcus's light, and Harper's engine flame. Then it entered the shell. The 7 moons stopped. The tower stopped. The ocean far below stopped. A sound deeper than thunder rolled through every floor. The white shell spread apart into 2 jaws. Something enormous opened its eyes beyond them. The world maw had a body. The world maw did not climb out of the shell. The shell had only been its tooth. Its real body coiled around the outside of the tower, hidden behind weather and distance. As the jaws opened, the storms peeled away. I saw a creature longer than the horizon wrapped around every floor. White plates covered its back. Black mouths opened between the plates. Its eyes were empty circles that pulled light inward. One of the 7 stone moons drifted too close. The world maw bit it. The moon vanished. There was no explosion, no debris. One moment, a world of forests and oceans existed. The next, the space was empty. Then gravity disappeared from that part of the floor. The remaining moons stopped orbiting. Oceans lifted from their surfaces. Mountains floated away. My body lost every sense of up and down. The creature had not eaten only stone. It had eaten the moon's gravity with it. The second mouth opened along its side and swallowed the red blizzard rising from below. Heat and cold vanished from the air around that mouth. A third bit into the hurricane floor and consumed sound. The tower went silent from the 7th floor down. Every meal removed another rule from the world. The world maw turned its largest eye toward the ocean 80 miles below. If it reached the surface, the city would not be crushed. The city would become something that had never existed. Marcus moved first. Solar threads erupted from his hands and wrapped around the open jaws. He anchored the light to 3 stone moons and pulled. The giant teeth slowed. Gavin ran along one thread. With gravity broken, the golden line became his ground. He reached the nearest black mouth and drove both blades into the soft space between its plates. Wind exploded inside the wound. The creature twisted. One movement shook the entire tower. Harper's dining table broke apart under us. She grabbed the permanent midnight lantern in one hand and the tiny stone elephant in the other. I used 100 hands to catch her, Marcus, Gavin, and every useful piece of equipment before they drifted into the world Maw's eye. Then Elias attacked me. Black branches burst from his chest and crossed the gap like spears. Each one carried a different stolen disaster. One tip froze the air, one aged whatever it touched, one erased skills, one compressed space. I used zero step through the first attack and shed position through the second. The null branch pierced my empty coat. The aging branch struck the umbrella and turned the fabric brittle. The space branch closed around my left arm. I opened permanent midnight inside the compression and pulled free. Elias appeared in front of me. Crystal roots had replaced both legs. The black seed was gone from behind him, but thin vines still connected his body to the world Maw's shell. Every time the creature ate, new fruit grew across his shoulders. He swung one branch. I blocked with the crystal rib. The impact cracked a stone moon behind us. Elias drove a fruit into the rib. Its mouth bit down and began swallowing the soul-bound starlight. I used seedless flame through the bone. Colorless fire entered the fruit and burned away its ability to separate energy from matter. The fruit swallowed part of the rib itself. Soul-bound equipment could not remain stolen. The rib returned to my armory. Half the fruit returned with it. Inside my soul, the black mouth found 99 other pieces of equipment waiting. The bell hammer hit it first, then the red frying pan, then the chair. The fruit spat itself back out of my armory smoking and somehow wearing the scarf. I punched it. Honest impact multiplied the strike by every skill I had used since entering the summit. The fruit burst against Elias' chest. Black juice became dozens of tiny mouths that bit at both of us. Elias did not react to the pain. The world Maw was using his nerves now. His body moved like a branch caught in a storm, too fast in some directions and completely still in others. He struck my chest with an open palm. The black orchard entered me. For one breath, roots spread through my mana channels. Tiny mouths opened along every skill. Pocket sun dimmed. Frozen moment cracked. Thunder feast began eating its own lightning. 100 hands turned inward and grabbed at my bones. I used patient ember on myself. The trait had marked every enemy I damaged, making later attacks stronger. It did not care that the enemy was growing inside my body. I bit my tongue, dealt 1 point of damage to the roots, and marked them. Then I used seedless flame. The colorless fire burned the invasion from the inside. Black roots poured from my skin as ash. Elias reached for my throat. Gavin cut his arm away. He came across the broken gravity field with one blade in his teeth and the other in his hand. Without stable air, his wind flickered, but he had learned from the void floor. Solar threads wrapped his ankles. Marcus swung him like a silver comet. Gavin cut through Elias, 3 branches, and the vine connecting him to the world Maw. The severed vine released a storm of screams. No sound existed below us, but the screams had weight. They struck Gavin and launched him toward the open jaw. I used vector claim to bend his momentum. He curved around one tooth, ran along its edge, and cut a glowing line through the shell. Harper appeared from nowhere riding the gravity-defying chair. She had mounted 2 Starweb engines behind it and tied the tiny stone elephant to the front. The permanent midnight lantern hung below like a bomb. She hit Elias at full speed. The chair ignored the direction of impact. Elias did not. He flew backward through the white shell and into the world Maw's mouth. The creature swallowed him. For 1 second, the vines connecting Elias to the shell pulled tight. Then the world Maw spat him back out. Even it found him difficult to digest. Harper circled and tossed me the lantern. She shouted something I could not hear because the lower floors had lost sound. I read her lips. She needed time. Behind her, the remains of the 7 moons, train parts, Colosseum stone, and dining table engines were gathering under 100 hands. Harper wanted to build something. Of course she did. I sent 50 invisible hands to help her and kept the rest around Elias. Marcus still held the jaws with solar threads. Blood ran from his fingers. Each thread was connected to a moon, and each moon was being pulled toward the creature's mouth. He could not hold forever. Gavin cut shell plates faster and faster, creating a path along the world Maw's neck. Every wound opened into another mouth. The mouth swallowed his wind, so he stopped using wide attacks. He made each cut small enough to enter before it could be eaten. Elias rose between us. The black fruit across his body ripened all at once. One released the entire upside-down ocean. Water appeared in a sphere around the summit. The world Maw drank half of it. The rest became a spinning sea around the stone moons. Another fruit released the desert of seconds. Silver sand mixed with the water and aged it. Waves became ancient ice, then dust, then nothing. A third fruit released null rain. My active skills flickered. Marcus's solar threads vanished for half a second. The jaws moved. One white tooth closed around the highest tower floor. Stone, storm, and sky disappeared between the creature's teeth. The tower dropped 10 miles. Far below, the ocean rose toward us. I used world anchor on the tower. For 60 seconds, it refused to fall. Final echo repeated world anchor. I chose Marcus's solar threads. The light refused to break. Marcus looked at me through the rain. His hands were torn open, but the golden web became solid enough to hold the jaws again. Elias sent every branch toward him. I intercepted. Frozen moment stopped the first branch. White silence froze the energy inside the second. Gravity orchard bent the third toward the fourth. Vector claim turned the fifth back into Elias. 100 hands caught the rest. The null rain erased each skill after one use. I kept using different ones. That was the advantage of having 100 abilities in a place designed to suppress power. The rain could silence a skill pattern, but before it adjusted, I had already moved to the next. I used Ember Road to run across falling sparks. I used Iron Breath to exhale a wall of metal dust. I used Soft Mountain to make one stone moon flexible and wrap it around a branch. I used Far Hand to punch Elias from the other side of the summit. I used Quiet Blade to cut without producing a movement the fruit could notice. I used Lucky Ruin, a ridiculous skill that made the least likely broken object fail first. Harper's wrecked dining table exploded beneath Elias even though it was 50 yards away. I used Backward Wound to make the cut Gavin had dealt appear again from the opposite direction. I used Skyhook to catch a cloud and swing it like a hammer. I used Gentle Fall on a mountain-sized shell plate. It drifted down like a feather, blocked the null rain, and landed on Elias with the weight still waiting inside it. I canceled Gentle Fall. The shell plate remembered it was a mountain. Elias disappeared under it. World Maw opened a mouth beneath the plate and ate the entire thing. Elias emerged through another black mouth on its back. His missing arm had regrown as a branch carrying 12 fruit. He launched them in every direction. Each fruit opened over a different part of the summit. One released a city of bone that built itself in midair, towers speared toward Marcus's threads. One released a black moon that pulled Gavin off the creature's neck. One released a forest of walking routes around Harper's construction. One released a dragon-shaped flame that burned empty space. The remaining fruit came for me. I swallowed the first with hollow stomach. It released a blizzard inside my soul storage. The ocean I had stored froze. 12 tons of desert sand became ice. The angry half-fruit already trapped in my armory tried to bite it and lost 3 teeth. I caught the second fruit with the spoon and scooped out its disaster before the mouth opened. A river of acid spilled into the bowl. I stirred it with the normal frying fork and threw it at the Bone City. The third fruit aged my right hand to dust. I used shed position on the hand alone. The old location crumbled while my real hand reappeared 1 inch to the left. The fourth fruit ate gravity around my head. I planted a gravity orchard seed in my own chest and pulled myself downward anyway. The fifth fruit erased color. The world became gray around me. Permanent midnight remained black because it was not a color. I hid inside it, used 0 step, and appeared behind Elias. I drove the bent spoon through the crystal roots on his back. It did not stab him. It scooped. The slime core pulled on the connection between Elias and the world maw. Black energy filled the bowl. The spoon bent farther. Cracks spread through its handle. Elias turned his head. For the first time since the seed entered the shell, his human eye focused on me. He said one word, "Stop." I could not tell whether he meant me or the creature. World Maw answered by biting through his remaining vines. The black connection snapped. Every fruit on Elias' body opened inward. The orchard began eating him. He had wanted to become the predator that no dungeon could threaten. Years earlier, a gate had erased the district where he lived. He had watched monsters eat streets, homes, and people while hunters arrived too late. He decided the only safe thing in a world of mouths was to become the largest mouth. He had climbed by consuming instead of rebuilding. Now his power had reached its natural end. Hunger did not care who fed it. Black branches wrapped around Elias' face and pulled him toward the world maw. I caught his wrist. He looked surprised. I did not save him because he deserved it. I saved him because the world maw wanted him. Anything that monster wanted, I wanted somewhere else. 100 hands grabbed Elias' body. Marcus sent 1 solar thread around his waist. Gavin cut roots from his legs. Harper's machine fired a chain made from train rails and caught his chest. The 4 of us pulled. The world maw pulled back. For 1 second, Elias became the rope in a contest between 5 S-rank monsters and 1 bad decision. Then the creature opened its largest mouth. It did not bite Elias. It bit the concept of distance between us. Elias crossed the gap without moving. The jaws closed around him. I used zero step and followed before the teeth met. Darkness swallowed us. Inside the world maw, there was no tower, no moons, and no sky. There were only the things it had eaten. They floated in an endless black stomach, pieces of weather, broken cities, extinct monsters, old sunlight, gravity from the missing moon, and sounds stolen from the seventh floor. The consumed disasters circled a central black heart. Elias hung above that heart, roots pulling from his body into it. The world maw was using him as a final meal and a nervous system. I landed on a piece of frozen lava. All 100 of my retained skills lit at once. The creature noticed me. Every mouth inside the darkness turned in my direction. Then they began to close. The mouths closed from every direction. I used borrowed horizon and chose the black heart as forward. My body fell toward it. Teeth crossed behind me. One mouth bit through the frozen lava. Another swallowed a river of acid. A third ate the stolen sound of the hurricane floor, and thunder returned to the tower outside in one violent burst. Elias hung above the heart inside a cage of his own roots. Black fruit covered him from shoulder to ankle. Some mouths bit inward. Others stretched toward the heart. His human eye followed me, while the dark eye on the other side of his face rolled toward the world maw's thoughts. I threw the wooden door. It landed flat against the black heart. The door had come from my 44th reset. Its ability was simple. Place it on any solid surface, and it opened through that surface as if a room waited behind it. I grabbed the handle. The heart noticed. Every floating disaster attacked at once. A city of bone built itself around me. Towers closed like fingers. A black ocean rose through the streets. Silver sand aged the water. Burning snow fell from a sky with no color. Stone birds emerged from buildings, while the vacuum eye opened under the road. I still turned the handle. The door opened 1 inch. Hunger poured through the gap. Force pulled the bone city sideways. Towers bent. The ocean became a river entering the heart. Sand, snow, birds, and broken weather followed. My feet left the ground. The world maw was not protecting its heart by pushing me away. It was trying to swallow me first. I summoned the soul-bound boots and stepped on the pull itself. For 1 second, hunger became solid ground. I walked against it. The first step cracked the bone street. The second crossed a mile. 0 step erased the third. Black thread ring stored the movement. Final echo repeated it. I reached the door. Elias's roots stabbed down. 100 hands caught half. Gravity orchard bent the rest into the bone city. Seedless flame burned the mouths from their tips. I pulled the door wider. The black heart had an interior. Inside, millions of thin lines connected every mouth on the world maw's body. Each line carried a different kind of hunger. One consumed matter. One consumed heat. One consumed movement. One consumed sound. One consumed the ability of things to remain remembered. At the center of those lines floated a small, empty point. That was the true core, not a crystal, not a seed, an absence. The world maw existed to fill it and could never succeed. Elias ripped free from his root cage. He landed between me and the door. Black fruit opened along both arms. The human half of his face looked exhausted. The other half smiled with too many teeth. He still wanted the core. Even after it had eaten his body, his orchard, and his control, he believed he could take the absence inside himself and become greater than the thing swallowing him. That was the difference between us. I had reset because I understood that reaching the top did not make me complete. Elias consumed because he could not tolerate anything above him. He attacked. One fruit released null rain inside the world maw. My active skills shut down. Another released the vacuum eye and compressed the doorway. A third poured aged sand over my soul-bound equipment. A fourth became a black spear aimed at my chest. I caught the spear with my bare hand. 100 retained stat layers remained even when my skills vanished. The point entered my palm and stopped against bone. I head-butted Elias. The impact broke every fruit on his forehead. He staggered. I grabbed his arm, turned, and threw him through the bone city. His body crossed 3 towers and hit a floating mountain. The null rain followed. I ran after him without skills. Bone memory carried every movement from 100 climbs. My feet knew sword forms, boxing steps, spear pivots, climbing angles, falling control, and the exact rhythm required to run across a monster's eyelashes. I jumped from bone tower to bone tower while the world maw's mouths snapped around us. Elias formed a blade from crystal roots. I summoned the first kitchen knife I had ever soulbound. It was not the original warm knife from my awakening. That one had broken long ago. This blade came from my first reset, made from the bell tower hydra's smallest fang. It had no grand power. It never dulled and always felt slightly warm in my hand. We collided on the floating mountain. Elias cut downward. I turned the blade aside. He grew a second root sword from his elbow. I trapped it with the bent spoon. He kicked and crystal roots extended from his heel. The umbrella blocked them. He opened a fruit at point-blank range. It released the red blizzard into my face. Null rain shut down white silence and seedless flame. I used the gloves instead. One grabbed heat, one grabbed cold. I pulled the blizzard apart with my hands and wrapped both temperatures around the kitchen knife. The blade became half red, half white. I cut through Elias' root sword. He opened the vacuum eye in his chest. Space compressed around my arm. I shoved the gravity-defying chair into the eye. The chair became stuck in no direction at all. The compression jammed. I kicked Elias off the mountain. He grew wings made of black branches and came back faster. The null rain ended. All 100 skills returned. Elias released every fruit. I used every skill I needed. He sent an avalanche. I used soft mountain and folded it into a paper-thin ribbon. He sent burning birds. I used rain step to run between their flames and common throw to flick their own feathers through their cores. He released a lake of poison. Hollow stomach swallowed it. The angry fruit inside my armory drank the poison and became sick. He aged the bone city. I used youngstone, a skill that returned one damaged object to the condition it had before breaking. The towers rebuilt around him and trapped his branches inside their walls. He erased gravity. I used skyhook to pull myself toward a cloud. He erased the cloud. I used borrowed horizon and fell toward his face. He filled the space between us with teeth. 0 step erased that space. My warm knife entered the crystal roots over his heart. I used the spoon to scoop the connection beneath them. Black energy poured out. Elias grabbed my wrist. Fruit mouths covered his fingers and bit into every active skill flowing through me. Pocket sun went dark. 100 hands vanished. Gravity orchard seeds cracked. Final echo stopped. He smiled. I used warm touch. I had not retained the original skill. I did not need to. After 100 climbs, I understood heat well enough to move it without a named power. The gloves held fire from the red blizzard. My warm knife held the memory of every heated strike I had ever made. The black thread ring stored the movement of my first S-rank kill. I pressed the knife against the spoon. The stored heat entered the black connection. Not enough to burn it, enough to make it expand. The crystal root swelled by a fraction. The spoon fit underneath. I pulled. The connection came out of Elias' chest like a black rope. Every fruit on his body screamed. The world maw felt the separation and opened all its inner mouths. I used patient ember on the rope. The first pull marked it. The second became stronger. Bone memory repeated the exact angle. Black thread ring replayed the movement. Final echo returned and repeated the last skill without cost. The rope tore free. Elias became human again in pieces. Crystal roots still covered half his body, but the fruit collapsed. The dark eye closed. His breath returned with a violent gasp. I caught him with 100 hands and threw him toward the wooden door. He hit the surface beside it and stuck there, barely conscious. The world maw lost its borrowed nervous system. Every mouth bit at once without coordination. Some swallowed other mouths, some ate shell plates, some removed the movement from their own teeth and froze open. The black heart spasmed. That was our opening. Outside the creature, Harper finished building. I could not see her directly, but one of my invisible hands still held the permanent midnight lantern near the summit. Through the hand, I felt the shape of her machine. She had taken the remaining stone moons and chained them around the tower's central rail. Marcus's solar threads formed a bowstring between them. Gavin had cut the world maw's shell into curved channels. Train engines, Colosseum runes, storm cores, the gravity-defying chair, the screaming kettle, and the tiny stone elephant sat at the center. Harper had built a weapon from 3 dungeons, 7 weather floors, half a flying train, and furniture. It was pointed at the world maw's throat. She needed the heart exposed. I stepped through the wooden door. The true core waited inside the black heart, an empty point surrounded by millions of hunger lines. The moment I entered, my 100 skills began interfering with one another. Pocket sun heated white silence. White silence froze thunder feast. Thunder feast overloaded 0 step. 0 step pulled against world anchor. Gravity orchard bent 100 hands. Hollow stomach tried to swallow the side effects. Final echo repeated whichever collision happened last. No soul was meant to hold these powers together. During ordinary fights, I used a few at a time. Inside the core, every skill reacted to every type of hunger around it. The world maw dragged all 100 awake. My body lit with 100 different colors. Then the color reading line passed through me and half vanished. My bones cracked. My heart stopped for 1 beat. Second thought stretched that beat into an eternity. I had 1 instant to arrange 100 impossible abilities before they tore me apart. That was still more time than I had possessed during my first life. I placed patient ember first. It marked the core. Bone memory came second. It recorded the sequence. Endless Furnace came third and emptied my mana on purpose. Thunder Feast came fourth and replaced the missing energy with Stolen Lightning. White Silence froze the surge. Frozen Moment stopped the freeze. Pocket Sun heated the stopped instant. Gravity Orchard bent the heat into a ring. 100 hands held the ring apart. Zero Step erased the gaps between the palms. Hollow Stomach swallowed the overflow. Seedless Flame burned away the incompatibility between the next two skills. World Anchor fixed the sequence in place. Final Echo repeated World Anchor. The structure stabilized. One by one, I added the rest. Iron Breath became the frame. Quiet Blade became the edge. Far Hand extended it. Rain Step gave it rhythm. Sky Hook connected it to the outside. Young Stone repaired each crack the moment it formed. Soft Mountain let the power bend without breaking. Honest Impact multiplied the final strike. Common Throw ensured the smallest piece could pass the first defense. Shed Position left the explosion somewhere my body was not. Borrowed Horizon chose the direction. 90 abilities became a single chain. 95. 99. The final skill was Vector Claim. The first S-rank power I had ever retained. It touched the world Maw's hunger and changed its direction. The creature's need to consume had always pointed outward. I turned it inward. Every hunger line snapped toward the empty core. The black heart began swallowing itself. World Maw convulsed outside. The summit shell cracked. Its jaws opened wide enough to reveal the tower inside its throat. Harper fired. I felt the shot before I saw it. Marcus released every solar thread. The stone moons snapped together like the arms of a giant bow. Gavin's channels guided the force along the creature's shell. Train engines detonated in sequence. The screaming kettle produced one final warning note. The gravity-defying chair insisted that the projectile travel in all directions at once. The tiny stone elephant flew from the weapon. It was still the size of a toy. Harper had used the shrinking cannon in reverse. The elephant grew as it entered the World Maw's throat. Dog-sized, car-sized, building-sized, mountain-sized. A stone elephant larger than the summit charged down the creature's body with 7 moons, a solar web, and every ounce of stolen weather behind it. It struck the black heart from outside. I struck from inside. The World Maw's own hunger pulled both attacks into the empty core. 100 retained skills aligned for a single instant. I called the attack 100 lives, 1 strike. Then I punched the absence. My fist did not hit anything. That was why it worked. The empty core had never been touched because every attack passed into the absence and became food. 100 lives, 1 strike was not an attack the normal way. It was a complete chain of forces, directions, temperatures, movements, spaces, sounds, and conditions arranged around nothing. When Vector Claim turned the hunger inward, the absence tried to consume the chain. The chain consumed back. For one impossible instant, the World Maw bit itself from both sides. The black heart collapsed. A white crack crossed the darkness, then another. Light poured through the lines, carrying the missing rules of every devoured floor. Gravity returned first. I fell sideways, sound returned next, and the scream of the World Maw arrived all at once. Heat, color, movement, and distance rushed back behind it. The creature's interior became a storm of restored reality. Bone City exploded into music. The black ocean fell in 6 directions. Ancient sand became young stone. The missing moon's gravity returned as a blue sphere and pulled every disaster into orbit. Elias tore free from the wooden door. The returning force threw him toward the collapsing core. I used 100 hands, but most of the invisible arms had broken during the strike. 3 fingers caught his coat. The coat ripped. I used black thread ring. It replayed the motion of the first time I had grabbed him. My hand closed around his wrist again. The black heart broke between us. We were launched out of the World Maw's throat with a mountain-sized stone elephant, 7 shattered moons, and half the tower's summit. Outside, the sky had become a white wound. World Maw uncoiled from the tower. Its body twisted across the horizon, smashing through clouds and sending waves over the ocean. Every mouth along its sides turned inward. They bit shell plates, swallowed teeth, and tore chunks from the creature's own length. Harper's weapon came apart beneath her. Marcus caught her with solar threads. Gavin rode 1 broken moon through the debris, carving a path toward us. The giant stone elephant struck the World Maw's lower jaw 1 final time. The jaw snapped. The elephant gave a tiny, proud trumpet despite being made from stone. Then it shattered into a rain of pebbles. Harper screamed its name. She had never named it out loud, which was good, because I had already spent enough time getting attached to dangerous objects. World Maw's largest eye closed. Its body began dissolving into black snow. The tower stopped shaking. For one breath, I thought we had won. Then something shot from the creature's chest. A black point crossed the sky below us. The true core had survived. It was smaller now, no larger than a seed, but it still pulled at everything around it. Clouds stretched toward it, light bent, the ocean rose in a narrow column beneath its path. The World Maw's dying body was falling apart, but the hunger could grow another shell if it reached enough energy. The seed was heading for the city. Not because it had chosen a target. The city was simply the largest concentration of heat, motion, sound, and life nearby. Elias saw it. His eyes sharpened. The crystal roots covering his body moved for the first time since I severed the orchard. One black branch extended from his palm. He pulled away from me. I tightened 100 hands around him. He cut through them with the crystal edge and dropped. Elias fell after the seed. Even with the World Maw dying around him, he still believed one final bite could make the power his. I followed. Gravity had returned unevenly. Some regions pulled down. Others pulled toward the tower, the moons, or the missing floor. I used borrowed horizon and chose the seed as forward. My fall became a dive. Gavin reached me first. He landed on my back for one step, pushed off, and crossed the sky in a spiral of wind. His blade struck Elias' crystal branch. Sparks spread across the clouds. Elias formed 3 more branches from his ribs. He moved through the air by stabbing them into gravity itself and pulling. Gavin cut one. The second hooked his blade. The third struck his chest. Marcus's solar thread caught Gavin before the branch pierced through. Marcus swung him clear and sent a web toward Elias. Elias released the last living fruit from his shoulder. The mouth swallowed every thread that touched it. The fruit grew to the size of a carriage and spat out black sunlight. Marcus crossed his arms. His own stolen energy hit him and launched him into a broken tower floor. Harper had no machine left. She rode the gravity-defying chair through the sky with the screaming kettle tied under one arm. She passed Marcus, hit him with the kettle, and changed his direction enough to miss the stone wall. Then she aimed the chair at Elias. He turned one branch. The crystal tip touched the chair. The chair's refusal to obey gravity vanished. Harper dropped. I split my remaining 100 hands. Half caught Harper, half pulled me faster. Elias reached the seed first. The black point floated above his palm. The skin on his arm turned transparent. Tiny mouths opened along his veins. Crystal roots grew from his spine. He smiled through the pain. The seed began entering him. I threw the bent spoon. Elias formed a wall of roots. Common throw let the spoon ignore the first barrier. It passed through the wall and struck the seed. The slime core inside the bowl scooped one mouthful of hunger. That tiny theft interrupted the connection. Elias looked up. I hit him with the warm kitchen knife held backward in my fist. Flat side struck his jaw. Honest impact multiplied the blow by the number of skills I had used since leaving the World Maw. Elias crossed the sky, bounced from a falling shell plate, and landed on the giant spoon as it spun below us. The spoon carried both him and the seed toward the ocean. I used zero step to land beside him. We stood on the bowl of a flying spoon, while the remains of a cosmic monster fell around us. Elias attacked without hesitation. Crystal roots became claws. He drove one through my shoulder. I trapped the arm under mine and planted gravity orchard seeds along the branch. He opened tiny mouths across his chest. They bit into my mana and dragged pocket sun from my soul. A pea-sized star appeared between us. Elias tried to swallow it. I used white silence and froze the star's energy. He swallowed it anyway. I released the freeze after it entered his roots. Light burst from every crack in his body. Elias staggered but did not fall. He grabbed my face and released the aged sand stored in his final fruit. Years pressed against my skin. My hair whitened. My hands wrinkled. The spoon rusted beneath us. I used young stone on the spoon. The soul-bound metal returned to the condition it had before damage. The restored movement threw Elias off balance. I used shed position on my aged body. The old location remained in his grip as a hollow outline. My real body appeared behind him, still young, and kicked the back of his knee. Elias fell toward the seed. He grabbed it with both hands. The black point entered his chest. For 1 second, the sky went dark. A mouth opened across Elias' torso. He began growing. Crystal branches spread into wings. White shell plates formed over his arms. The hunger had found a smaller body, and it was building fast. The spoon tilted beneath the new weight. The ocean filled my view below. I had maybe 5 seconds before Elias became a second World Maw. I could have destroyed his body. Pocket sun inside him would have done it. Seedless flame could burn away the remaining power. Honest impact could turn one punch into enough force to finish both. That would leave the empty core free, so I attacked his choice instead. I summoned the black thread ring's oldest stored movement. The ring had kept one action from my first S-rank life, the moment I pressed reawaken. It could not reset another person. It could not activate the blue option for Elias. It stored only the physical movement of my finger choosing to let power go. I replayed that movement against his chest. My finger touched the mouth growing there. Vector claim followed the motion and redirected the seed's pull. Instead of drawing power into Elias, the hunger pulled his power out. The crystal wings collapsed, shell plates fell away, black branches ripped from his body and entered the seed in reverse. Every stolen core fragment, every fruit, every piece of the black orchard left him. Elias screamed. I held my finger in place. Patient ember marked the reversal. Final echo repeated vector claim. The pull doubled. The last crystal root came out of his heart. Elias became human again. The seed floated between us, swollen with everything it had reclaimed. I opened the umbrella beneath it. The black point fell into the fabric. The umbrella tried to block the concept of hunger. It lasted half a second. That was enough. I closed the umbrella around the seed. The mouth inside bit the cloth, the ribs in the trapped space. The umbrella shook violently. Black cracks spread along the handle. I shoved the whole closed umbrella into hollow stomach. The seed entered my soul storage. Every stored object attacked it. The ocean hit first, the desert followed. The half-eaten fruit bit the seed and was eaten back. The bell hammer struck. The red frying pan rang. The sandwich remained completely untouched, proving it was the most dangerous thing I owned. The seed began consuming the storage space itself. I had seconds before it reached my soul. I released seedless flame inside hollow stomach. Colorless fire burned away the seed's ability to feed on powers. It continued eating matter. White silence froze its movement. It continued eating the absence around matter. Frozen moment stopped its bite. It continued being hungry without moving. World anchor fixed the seed in its current condition. For 60 seconds, the hunger could not change. I used the bent spoon from inside the storage. The spoon scooped the empty point from the center. There was no force, light, heat, or mana to grab, only absence. But the spoon had spent 100 resets scooping things it should not understand. Dragon breath, momentum, lightning, dungeon cores, the connection between Elias and a world-eating monster. Compared to those, nothing was just another difficult soup. The spoon lifted the absence. The seed collapsed around the empty bowl. Seedless flame burned the shell. White silence froze the hunger. Patient ember multiplied the damage. Final echo repeated the scoop. The empty point split into two smaller absences. The world Ma's hunger tried to fill both at once. Then 4, then 8. Final echo repeated the repetition through a retained trait called cascading habit. Each empty point divided again. The hunger spread thinner, chasing more impossible holes. 16, 32, 64, 128. The core exhausted itself trying to fill every absence. The black seed became a gray stone. No mouth, no pull, no hunger. Just a smooth pebble resting in the bent spoon. I released hollow stomach. The closed umbrella popped back into the sky, smoking. I opened it. The gray pebble fell into my hand. Elias stared at it. His power was gone. His body was covered in ordinary wounds. The calm certainty had finally left his face. Then the flying spoon broke. We fell toward the ocean. Above us, the dead world maw began coming apart for real. Its body turned into white shell fragments and black rain. The tower of empty weather cracked from summit to base. Every stolen rule returned to the world in violent waves. Gravity slammed downward. Heat flashed through the clouds. Sound returned as a roar heard across the continent. The ocean rose 3,000 feet. A wall of water raced toward the city. I caught Elias with one hand and the umbrella with the other. The gray core pebble went between my teeth because I had run out of hands. It tasted like chalk and poor decisions. Harper fell above us. Gavin fell beside her. Marcus hung from one solar thread connected to nothing. The broken tower fell toward all of us. I had defeated the hunger. Now I had to save the world from the leftovers. The first thing I did was spit out the gray core pebble. It landed in my hood. The second thing I did was use 100 hands. Invisible palms spread through the falling wreckage. 10 caught Harper and the remains of her chair. 10 caught Gavin. 20 caught Marcus and every solar thread still attached to him. 5 held Elias because even unconscious, he had the bad manners to fall in several directions at once. The rest pushed against the broken tower. My hands met a mountain of stone, moving faster than sound. Every invisible arm cracked. The tower kept falling. I used final echo. Another 100 hands appeared. They cracked too. Patient ember marked the tower after the first contact. Every later push became more effective. Bone memory remembered the exact angle from holding the meteor coliseum over the city. Gravity orchard planted seeds across the falling floors. Vector claim bent their momentum sideways. The tower did not stop. It tilted. Instead of falling directly on us, the upper half began rotating toward the ocean. That created a new problem. The rotating tower struck the rising wave. 3,000 feet of water split around the stone. One half rushed toward the city. The other half climbed the tower like a ramp and launched into the clouds. Harper woke in one of my invisible hands. She looked at the wave, looked at the falling floors, and immediately started giving orders. I could not hear her over the returning sound, but she pointed at Marcus, drew a line through the air, pointed at Gavin, made a cutting motion, then hit the gravity-defying chair with her wrench. We understood. Marcus spread every remaining solar thread across the rotating tower. The golden lines formed a glowing net around the stone. Gavin ran along the net and cut the tower into controlled sections. Harper tied the chair to the largest piece and used its refusal to fall properly as a steering fin. I redirected the sections toward the wave. One tower floor hit the water flat and became a temporary wall. A second landed behind it. A third struck at an angle, turning the wave away from the city. Floor after floor fell into place. The upside-down ocean chamber became a basin. The desert floor became a silver beach. The gray city from the null rain became a breakwater. The volcano floor landed on its side and froze the water, touching its cold fire. We were building an island out of a collapsing catastrophe dungeon while falling through a storm of dead monster pieces. It was not even the strangest thing I had built that day. World Ma's dissolving body released one last pulse. Black snow touched the ocean. Wherever it landed, water forgot how to flow. Frozen shapes rose in the wave, not ice, but motionless liquid locked in place. The redirected water stacked higher. The entire wall leaned toward the city again. My world anchor was still holding the gray seed inside my soul's last recorded state. The 60-second effect had not ended. I could not choose the city until it released. The timer showed 9 seconds. The wave would reach shore in 6. I opened hollow stomach. During the first tower floor, I had swallowed part of an ocean. This wave was much larger. At S rank, with 100 retained stat layers and endless furnace feeding mana into the skill, I decided size was a suggestion. I inhaled. The front of the wave narrowed into a funnel. Water crossed miles in an instant and entered my mouth. The pressure stretched the air around me. My cheeks remained normal. My eyes did not. Every blood vessel in them burst at once. I kept drinking. The wave dropped by 100 feet, then 200. The city skyline appeared behind it. My soul storage filled. The umbrella, spoon, bell hammer, sandwich, and 96 other items floated in a black ocean inside me. The gray core pebble rested in the bent spoon and remained harmless under world anchor. The storage walls began cracking. I could not swallow the entire wave. I did not need to. I only needed 6 seconds. Gavin reached the front of the water. He ran across its surface so quickly that wind formed beneath his feet. Every step carved a line. He did not cut the wave apart. He drew channels through it, guiding water toward the tower island. Marcus anchored solar threads to the city's tallest buildings and spread them across the harbor. The threads became a golden net. Water passed through, but falling tower fragments did not. He caught entire floors and placed them into Harper's growing barrier. Harper rode the chair along the top of the wave. She had tied the screaming kettle to its underside. The kettle shrieked every time a dangerous current approached. Harper hit the water with the shovel that could dig through sound, creating silent tunnels where pressure collapsed inward. The wave lost shape. 3 seconds. I swallowed another mountain of water. 2 seconds. The city disappeared behind spray. 1 second. World anchor released the gray core. The pebble remained gray. I selected the city. For 60 seconds, it refused to change. The remains of the wave hit the harbor. Water climbed buildings but could not break windows. Streets flooded without moving cars. Tower fragments struck rooftops and shattered themselves. The city held like one enormous soul-bound item. I released hollow stomach upward. The swallowed ocean erupted from my mouth as a vertical river. Pocket sun waited above it. The tiny star turned the river into steam. White silence froze the steam's movement before it could spread. A white pillar rose from the harbor to the clouds. Gravity Orchard bent the pillar over the tower island. Frozen moment released. The steam became rain. Warm water fell harmlessly across the new stone shores. The tidal wave was gone. The city remained standing. I stopped falling because Gavin hit me from the side. He had used a wind spiral to catch Harper, Marcus, Elias, and me inside one rotating current. Marcus reinforced it with solar threads. Harper jammed the gravity-defying chair under us. The 4 of us in one defeated dungeon eater landed on the newest tower floor just as it settled into the ocean. The floor cracked. The tiny stone elephant's head rolled from the debris and stopped at Harper's feet. She picked it up with both hands. For once, she did not make a joke. I reached into my soul armory and found a pebble from the giant elephant's shattered body. Soul-bound equipment had a strange loyalty. The original tiny figure had been part of the Colosseum, not one of my retained items. but the stone had spent enough time attached to our train, dining table, and impossible weapon that one fragment had followed the umbrella into hollow stomach. I pressed the pebble against the broken head. Young stone restored one damaged object to its earlier condition. The tiny elephant became whole. It gave one soft stone trumpet. Harper hugged it. Then she remembered we were watching and hit me with her wrench. The impact finally made me feel how injured I was. My shoulder had a hole in it, 3 ribs were broken. My mana channels felt like burned wire. Most of my soul-bound equipment was soaked. The umbrella refused to open. The spoon had developed a crack shaped like a frown. Marcus collapsed onto his back, still holding one solar thread connected to the city. Gavin sat with both blades across his knees. One blade was broken at the tip. The other had melted halfway through. Ilias lay near the edge of the floor. All crystal roots had vanished from his body. No black fruit remained. His hair moved in the ordinary wind. He looked smaller without the orchard, not physically, but in the way a mountain looks small after it stops blocking the sky. He opened his eyes once. He looked at the gray core pebble in my hood. Then he looked at the city. The city was still there. He closed his eyes again. The tower of empty, whether finished, collapsing behind us. Its lower floors settled into the ocean as a chain of strange islands. The upside-down sea poured into a new lagoon. Silver desert sand spread along the shore. Red snow fell over a warm volcano. The silent gray city stood half-submerged, its blank creatures gone. Lightning from the void floor climbed into the night and became a permanent web of stars above the island. The catastrophe dungeon was dead. Its pieces were not. They had become land. For several minutes none of us moved. Then the city began cheering. The sound crossed the harbor like thunder. People stood on rooftops, bridges, train cars, and the jungle wail still spread across the western district. Giant screens showed the tower island, the dying world maw, and the 4 hunters sitting in the rain. The S above my head had returned. It flickered once. Then 100 faint S symbols appeared behind it, arranged like wings. The screens zoomed in. The entire city saw them. Marcus looked at the symbols and laughed. Not his public smile, not the polished laugh he used when cameras wanted confidence. A tired, disbelieving laugh from someone who had spent years thinking the summit belonged to him and had just watched a former F-rank punch a hole through hunger. He stood slowly. The city's most famous S-rank faced me. Then he bowed. The cheering became louder. Gavin stood next. He did not bow. That was not his style. He raised one broken blade toward me, the way a swordsman acknowledged a target worth chasing. Harper remained seated with the stone elephant in her lap. She held up the destroyed scanner. Its screen showed a final reading. Power classification, impossible. Then the device exploded. Harper nodded as if it had finally produced a reasonable result. I should have given a speech. Marcus would have known what to say. Gavin could have made 3 words sound sharp. Harper could have threatened the screens until they applauded correctly. I looked at the city that had laughed at my F-rank less than an hour earlier. I held up the bent spoon. The cheering shook rain from the clouds. That was enough. The next few days moved almost as quickly as the battle. The jungle whale became a park because nobody could move it, and its forest kept producing fruit. Dead train engine remained in the guild fountain, although Harper rebuilt it twice and claimed it was only parked. The Meteor Coliseum fragments were turned into floating bridges between the city and the new tower island. The towers surviving weather no longer attacked people. Red snow still burned if held too long. The silver beach still made old shoes fall apart. The star web still produced lightning crabs on cloudy nights. Compared to what it had been, that counted as peaceful. Ilias remained asleep in a sealed chamber made from null rain stone. The gray material suppressed any fragment of the black orchard that might have survived, but the scans found nothing. Hunger was gone. Whether Ilias woke as an ordinary hunter, an ordinary criminal, or someone capable of understanding what he had nearly done was a problem for later. I kept the gray core pebble inside the bent spoon. It never moved. Harper tested it with 12 machines, 3 weather samples, and the tiny stone elephant. The pebble had no mana, no hunger, and no visible ability. It was simply the remains of an absence that had finally stopped trying to fill itself. She wanted to put it in an engine. I said no. She asked again every 6 hours. Gavin began training on the tower island. He ran across the upside-down lagoon, cut burning snowflakes without melting his blades, and practiced standing on sound after watching me do it. He still called me an F-rank whenever he wanted a rematch. Now it sounded like respect. Marcus stopped performing for the city and started protecting it. The change confused everyone. He still dressed like every battle happened between lunch and a haircut, but he used solar threads to repair buildings, lift tower debris, and carry food to people stranded on the jungle whale. When someone praised him, he pointed toward the new island. He never admitted that I was stronger in direct words again. He did not need to. Harper moved her workshop into the dead train engine. She mounted the stone elephant over the door and hung the screaming kettle beside it as a warning system. The kettle screamed constantly because almost everything she built was dangerous. As for me, I returned to the guild testing floor. The hole had been repaired with a circular piece of Meteor Colosseum stone. A new crystal sat on a reinforced table. The same examiner waited behind it. The room was full. Hunters crowded every wall, balcony, and stair. No one laughed at my hoodie. No one stepped away from my bad luck. Some held spoons. That part was strange. The examiner asked me to place my hand on the crystal. I did. The crystal flashed S. Then it showed 100 overlapping skill signatures. The reinforced table bent. Harper had installed 6 emergency vents around the crystal. All 6 fired at once. Marcus wrapped the room in solar threads. Gavin opened the windows with wind. The crystal still exploded. A piece bounced off my forehead. The room remained silent until I said, "At least it was G." Everyone laughed. This time, I laughed with them for a different reason. The world had not become fair. There would always be people who judged the first letter they saw. There would always be strong hunters who confused attention with greatness and weak hunters who believed mockery was proof they should stop. I had climbed above all of them without asking permission, without waiting for belief, and without becoming the thing that tried to stand over me. I had done it by starting over. The reawakening window still waited in the corner of my vision. It had remained open since I reached S rank during the Cloud Zoo disaster. Reset to level 1 and F rank. Retain 1 skill. Retain 10% of base stats. Retain 1 class trait. Retain 1 soul-bound equipment item. This time I could keep World Anchor. Skill had held a city against a falling whale, fixed a tower in the sky, stabilized 100 incompatible powers, and frozen the world Maw's core long enough for me to turn hunger into a pebble. It was an excellent choice. My current class trait, Open Summit, made every skill slightly stronger after I overcame something ranked above me, also excellent. The gray core pebble had become soul-bound during the final battle. I could keep it as equipment, although Harper would probably follow me into every dungeon trying to borrow it. And 10% of my current base stats would be the largest permanent increase yet. Everything was ready for the 101st reset. I did not press it, not immediately. For the first time in years, I spent a full day as an S rank without throwing it away. I ate food that had not been stored in hollow stomach for several resets. I slept in a bed that was not inside a dungeon. I walked through the city while people pointed, whispered, and tried to hand me spoons to sign. At sunset, I went to the Tower Island. Harper was in the train workshop. Gavin was racing lightning across the star web. Marcus was using solar threads to lower a floating building onto a new foundation. Elias remained asleep beneath the null stone. I stood on the silver beach and watched the ocean. New Island made the horizon look different. Red snow drifted over black cliffs. Warm rain fell from the upside-down lagoon. The remains of the world Maw had become white reefs under the water. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the gray core pebble rang, not shook, not cracked. Rang like a tiny bell inside the spoon. I took it out. One pulse crossed the ocean. Far beyond the Tower Island, the water darkened in 5 separate lines. Harper's screaming kettle started howling from the workshop. Gavin stopped in the middle of a lightning step. Marcus turned toward the horizon. The sea opened. 5 enormous structures began rising from the deep. They were not copies of the Tower of Empty Weather. One looked like a staircase made from sleeping beasts. One was a spinning ring with a storm trapped in its center. One resembled a forest growing downward into the ocean. One was a black pyramid covered in moving stars. The 5th remained mostly underwater. Only a stone hand emerged. It was large enough to hold the city. The hand opened. A bell rested in its palm. The bell rang once. Every gate in the region answered. Harper reached me with 3 scanners. All 3 were smoking. She said the structures had not appeared because of our battle. Their energy had been rising from the deep for months, hidden beneath the Tower of Empty Weather's storms. The world Maw had simply been loud enough to drown out the warning. Gavin landed beside us with both repaired blades drawn. Marcus arrived on a bridge of sunlight. The city behind us was safe. Elias was defeated. The world Maw was a pebble. I had reached a position higher than every hunter who laughed at me, and for one entire day I had enjoyed it. Then the largest stone hand moved. Its fingers closed around the bell. Something beneath the water began pulling itself upward. The reawakening window waited beside my face. My finger moved toward it. I had reset from S rank to F rank 100 times. Looking at 5 new catastrophe dungeons rising beyond the horizon, I started wondering how much faster the 101st climb could be.